You know what? Look, that MacBook said, not so fast. You ain't about to just come on here trashing me. So, man. Anyway, apologies. Y'all got to bear with me till I get my bearings with this new MacBook. I don't even know what I did. All I did was move one thing and everything just said, nope, you're done. So, anyway, like I was saying, we're still gonna have the funeral service for this MacBook at the end of the live, but I'm not gonna talk about it no more because clearly, this thing got some kind of spirit or something in it. Because dang, that thing said, shut my whole live down. But like I was saying, since I had to yank the other version, that MacBook I got in 2012, and like I said, it went through 4 studio albums, right? Symphonic Euphoria, the hardcover, After Yesterday, Before Tomorrow. It went through the Generation Black web series. It went through the Comedically Hard-Headed podcast, all the So It Happened episodes, the music talk deep dives, including, and like I was saying, when I was doing the New Jack Swing one, I said it's time because we were fighting for our life trying to get it finished because it was like the thing kept freezing. Stuff that should only take maybe a week and a half to do took like 3.5 to 4. Um, what else was in there? All my magazine work when I was working with the magazine. So all my articles with that, any freelance video stuff I've been doing on the side. That also includes music that didn't make my albums. That includes, I mean, just everything was in that MacBook. I got that MacBook in 2012, and somehow it lasted this long, right? So it's time to put it on the glory. And like I was saying before, I was rudely interrupted by the whatever just turned off. This new MacBook, some of the cords are not compatible with some of the stuff in my system yet. So I had to order some adapters and all. Like I need a Thunderbolt or Thunder cable for my interface to work properly. There's a few other things. But anyway, we're here. No complaints. So much to get into. So let me go ahead and jump right into it. First on a lighter note, shout out to those in ATL who came out. That was a lot of fun. And Atlanta was a fun trip. I got a chance to just kind of catch up with family and stuff too. You know, my mama lives out there, so I got my mama time in. Good time, you know, family, friends. The event went really well. Lots of fun. For those who got to go, you got to see a song or two perform, so that was fun. I have to take a minute to shout out this place we went to in Duluth called the Breakfast Bar. When I tell you that might have been the best brunch I've ever had, like I keep looking at this camera and I forgot I set it up to this one. That might have been like the best brunch I've ever had. Man, and they were so accommodating because one, we were running super, super late because it was like 5 of us, and it was my friend's birthday at the same time. The same friend that shot my last music video. And long story short, they closed at 4 o'clock. We were on the other side of town. We were south of Atlanta. Duluth is north of Atlanta, and it was gonna be an hour to get to the venue. We didn't even leave until like 3:15. We were putting the order in while we were in the car, and they were so nice and accommodating when we got there because we really had like 15 minutes before they closed, and the staff just was like accommodating. It was our friend's birthday. They still did the birthday song and all the other stuff like that. But I had this fried lobster tail and waffle combo. I'm not even a lobster person, but when I tell you, I wish we would have got there earlier because I would have ordered the second one. That thing was so good. And I mean, everybody's food was just nice, and they had all kind of decor. You know, I love to eat. So man, my next Atlanta trip, I'm going back there again. That was an amazing, amazing meal. I just have to say, right? Anyway, we're not done with Atlanta. Next location is New York, May 2nd. That's going to be at the Gym and Bar Lounge, 1595 Broadway. So that's on the 2nd. So we'll be there. And like I said, it's not solely just my event. It's kind of a collaboration with a bunch of other artists and other just creatives and stuff. So yeah, I'm on a ticket, but there's other people. So please don't come thinking it's just going to be the Me, Myself, and I show. It's not. But you know, for everybody who comes, I always, you know, take time to hang out and chop it up with folks. And so it's just a good time. So that's May 2nd. And then we have something coming up in 2 more cities. So we'll kind of get to that when it gets to that. Anything else happy before I get into some of the heavier stuff? Let me see here. Oh yeah, I got a chance to listen to the Coco Jones album. I really do like her, so y'all support her when you get a chance. I really like that song "Other Side of Love." I think that should be her next single. I haven't got a chance to check out the Destin Conrad album, but I heard it's really nice, so that's going to be my next thing I look to as far as work. And then as far as TV, what I've been watching, I was really hooked on $1 Million Secret. That's that show where it's the people and it's like 12 people in a house. Somebody's a millionaire and they got to figure out who it is. that was an interesting one. It's a reality show. I was glued to that one. Now, the only thing that got on my nerves was all the crying. You know, the certain demographics of people like to cry to try to, you know, win people over. And I'm like, I ain't falling for that. But it was a great watch. And then right now, my mama got me into Ransom Canyon on Netflix. That's a pretty good one too. I don't normally be watching that kind of content, but it's decent. That's the one with the people in the small town and some other stuff. Shout out to National Geographic. They were nice enough to send me an invite to the screening of the Oklahoma City bombing docuseries that they have. There's actually two that are out right now. There's one on Netflix, but there's also one that premiered on Hulu that was done through Nat Geo. And so they were nice enough to send me an invite, and me and a good friend went, I think maybe that was last week or the week before, went to the screening. Definitely check that one out. I think of the 3 episodes, my favorite was the very first episode because it has a whole lot of behind the scenes of what was happening, because just as a coincidence, at the same time, in one of the local newsrooms, they were already filming a different kind of documentary. And then the bombing happened to take place while they were doing a documentary. So you got to see the behind the scenes of what it was like in the newsroom as stuff was coming in. And it's such a different time because this is before social media. This is when news doesn't move as fast as it does now. You know, something happens, like, you know, even with that plane that sadly collided with the military helicopter a few months back. That whole story was already all over social media before it even hit the news. And before it even hit the news, people on Twitter and stuff had figured out which flight it was, figured out, you know, who was, like, they had it figured out. So it's a different day and age. But back then, it just really showcases just how different mass media was. And as far as like the Oklahoma City bombing, that's probably one of the first tragedies I remember as a kid, because that took place, I think I was 5 or 6, right? That's my first time witnessing any kind of like major catastrophe where I could kind of understand what was happening and seeing the graphic details as they were coming. Because back then, you know, when stuff was happening live, you just saw it as it came, right? And so that's pretty much, yes, Eric, back then, that's 30 years ago. How much far back you want to go? You're going to stop trying to sun me on my channel. But yeah. And so, yeah, I think I had to be like 6. And so, but I will say the first episode does a really great job of humanizing the experience. I think because we're in this era where everybody is so, everybody's like an extremity of whatever they believe in or how they see the world. What I noticed in that episode, at least that first one, is that I can't remember the last time I felt like this about living here, but watching that in the first episode and how people responded kind of reminded me that, okay, I guess we are a country. I guess we do at some point, you know, have some element of camaraderie. Like, man. And so that first episode, I think, was really well put together from that aspect. So even if you only watch the first episode, I think it just kind of gives you that humanization of everything. Like, you're getting the backstory of the victims. You're getting what life was like, what people were doing, right? Out of nowhere. And then there's just boom, here's that, right? And so, you know, that was a very, very interesting watch. So shout out to Nat Geo for inviting me. They hosted it at the National Press Club. I haven't been, or the National Press Building, I haven't been there in years. I think the last time I've been there was when I was still with the kids, and we had an event with Denzel Washington, which was really, really cool. So yeah, there's that. Okay, now I'm going to talk about Sinners, but I'm not giving spoilers, so you don't have to jump ship. I've already written this down carefully to make sure I don't mess up the movie for those who have not seen it. And for you in the chat, do not mess this up for the people who have not seen it yet. We can come back to Sinners in a few weeks and really talk specific details, but do not mess it up for the others, please. Thank you very much. Right? And so as far as Sinners, I got a chance to see it Thursday. First of all, shout out to the fact that it's just an original film, right? We're in this era of nothing but remakes and live action this and live action that. And I'm getting so bored, to be honest. I mean, I don't mind the remakes and the revisitings and the prequels and the whatever. But at some point, you kind of just want something fresh and new. I kind of want to talk about that with music too towards the end. So somebody please remind me, because I had a thought about R&B. Somebody was saying you should bring back your R&B is Dead series. And I was like, I don't know, but I've been feeling some kind of way lately. But what I'll say, what I appreciate again was like with Ryan Coogler and everybody, very original script, very original ideas. Now, some folks are trying to say it mirrors the movie From Dusk Till Dawn. I guess if you're just talking about some element of like the whole vampire bit, I guess, but I saw it very differently. But yeah, Ryan Coogler, I think it's dope that he's been able to expand his range as a director, right? And, you know, when you're just looking at the kind of movies we've gotten Fruitvale Station, we've gotten Creed, we've gotten the Black Panther series, and we have this. And, you know, the range is just getting expanded. And I love that he's able to kind of dominate and conquer whatever it is he approaches. Now, you see folks are getting mad because he was able to ink that deal with the studios where he'll have ownership and that will be his intellectual property after 25 years. And folks are all of a sudden mad and ranting and, oh my God, they, you know, anytime we get a little piece of something, now they want to talk about how it's destroying the industry. Cut the crap. But I thought it was beautifully shot. The cinematography is just well put together, right? And one of the things, and I don't know if I just picked this up once I started doing film myself, but even when you're talking cinematography, just the way that you have like the LUTs and like the settings with the lighting and everything, it's almost like perfectly calibrated to make you feel like you're in that time period, right? And I've always said, like, even with lighting, everything is important. Normally, if you do like a comedy, the lighting is really bright and whimsical. If it's some doom and gloom thriller suspense film, it kind of has those blue tints a little bit more. If it's an action film, like everything, there's so many things we don't pay attention to as viewers that only people in like that movie side notice. But I was like, okay, they got the shots and everything right. The music and the score, even the way that the music complements the scene. And I love the incorporation of just Black music throughout it and how the music was presented in just the score, but also in the different scenes and what the people were experiencing. So I really enjoyed that. And you can tell it's very well researched, and there's all these different meanings and things that people are able to pick up. If you've been kind of digging through the rabbit holes on YouTube, there's so many people who have videos that are talking about what this means and what that means. And so it was kind of fun. I was like, now that I've watched all these other clips and went down a rabbit hole, I'm like, okay, now I got to go watch it again, right? Because I didn't even get a chance to watch it in IMAX or 4D. I just saw it in a regular theater. And it does not help that I went and embarrassed myself at the movie theater because I got there late. Because the theater I wanted to go to was already, I missed the window, so I had to buy a ticket at a different theater. Got there. Now, I love that they assigned seats, right? Because if you remember going to the movie theater when the seats weren't assigned and you got in there all late, and if you came in there with 3 or 4 people and y'all trying to squeeze around, and somebody said, you know, you don't got to do that no more. But anyway, went to the spot, saw somebody in my seat. And I didn't feel like fighting that day. I was like, I'm tired. And it was a bunch of white folks. I'm like, well, I'm happy y'all in this movie, but damn, we can't even. Okay, fine. So I just happened to notice there was like another seat, 2 seats over. So I was like, well, I'll just sit here. But when that person comes and says this is their seat, one of y'all getting up, right? And so I'm sitting in the seat. I purposely have not ordered food because this is one of those Alamo theaters where they have like, they come bring you the service and you order from the stuff. So I'm like, let me not order no food until I know for sure that this is going to be my seat. And so movies kicks in. Actually, I don't even think the movie started yet. It was still doing previews. Then this girl came and gave me that look. And I was like, oh, this your seat number 4? Okay. So I was like, well, one of them two need to get up because one of them in my seat. So I'm over here all big and bad, all loud mouth. Why was I in the wrong row? Like, my seat was the row behind. I felt so stupid. I'm like, dang, man. Because it was like this white dude and this Asian girl. And the guy was like, what's your seat number? I'm like, 806. He's like, that's the row behind us. I was like, you know, I was just playing. I just want to make sure everybody's paying attention. Y'all enjoy the movie. I'm gonna go on and sit back here. I was so embarrassed. But anyway, yeah, it was a really, really good movie. And it's funny because you're seeing again like how the industry kind of moves. I saw that article Variety tried to post where they were talking about, oh, it only made 60 million the first weekend and it had a $90 million budget. And I'm like, they made 2/3 of their budget in the first weekend. Like, why are y'all sitting here trying to act like this movie's about to flop or something? And we've seen it already cross that threshold. I think it's at like 100+ mil already. And it kind of reminds me of the fact that anytime we have anything that's very unapologetically Black or overtly Black, they're always trying to find something wrong with it. Remember when Best Man Holiday came out and it beat Thor at the box office? And I wrote down a quote. And then US Today had that quote saying, Best Man Holiday beats Thor as race-themed film soars. I said, what was race-themed about Best Man Holiday? Because everybody was Black in the movie? Like, y'all kill me doing that. And it's just interesting. It kind of highlights the fact that a lot of people really think that if they're not included in something, then it must be anti-them. And so you're kind of just seeing that. And I feel like that's the theme for this whole live. You're seeing that in so many spaces where as we come up or we get any element of advancement or progression, somebody got a problem with it. And they use all these different code words and everything to try to put us back in our place. I think that's something they've been trying to do with Ryan Coogler. And I feel like that's what's just happening with a lot of different things. In the movie, my favorite scene was there's a cross-generational scene. And you know what I'm talking about if you saw it. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but there's a cross-generational scene that I just absolutely loved. It has something to do with music. I thought it was beautifully shot. It was It was just a good watch. Now, the lesson that I think comes out of this movie, out of these two, and again, I'm not spoiling the movie, so don't worry. I think there's two lessons. Lesson number one that I specifically wrote: the door is closed. Okay, stop letting everybody in. Right? Because really, in all honesty, they had a really good thing going, but sometimes folks think the ice is colder at the other places, and they open the door to a whole bunch of foolery. So that's definitely lesson number one. And I think number two that I got out of it is sometimes the very thing that people are fighting against, they end up becoming, right? So if you know what I'm talking about, like there's a certain character that had something they were passionate about, and as they were fighting for it, the execution of what they wanted became oppressive to others. And I think that's so symbolic of where we are in the United States politically. There's a lot of people who stand behind a cause or are passionate about something, but their execution of how they go about it ends up becoming oppressive, or there's no consideration for the well-being or how the people that they think they're helping actually see the world, because they already think they got it figured out and they know what's best for everybody. And it was just something very evident in that film. I was like, I was over here looking at everything through a lens of 2025, and I was like, yep, I know what, that's that group right there, because they've been doing the most lately. And so you kind of get that part. And also, by the way, because I saw that random person who did a little smart aleck post talking about, well, there wasn't Latino representation in the movie. Can we get to a place where people understand that everybody does not have real estate in Blackness? Anytime we have something, it's great if it's successful, but that doesn't always mean that it's supposed to also include you. We already did a video on this when we talked about Kendrick in the pop-up show. And then the one guy was mad because he was like, there wasn't a Latino representation on the stage when he did Not Like Us 50,000 times on the stage. Again, every space is not going to be for you. Sometimes you can be in an arena or in an era where there's something that can be celebrated, but it's not about you. Like if I go and I watch some, first of all, as a Black person, most of these movies don't be about us to begin with, right? But if I go to anything and it's celebrating the culture of someone else, I'm not thinking about, well, why y'all didn't have me in there? If it's Asian American Heritage Month and they're having the events at the Chamber of Commerce, I'm not going in there with an attitude because I only see people from Southeast Asia and South Asia and all these different countries, but there's no Black representation. Doesn't make any sense. And so for the narrative of that actual film, I'm trying to figure out exactly what you thought you were supposed to be in the movie. And so sometimes it's kind of like, y'all can build your own stuff. We'll support it if it's good in the same way you support our stuff, but you don't have real estate in Blackness. And it's also a conversation of people thinking that they always own Black success. Anytime we have a piece of something, everybody wants to be a part of it or think they had something to do with it. So they'll tell us to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. They'll tell us we're not good enough in this current era. You're watching the federal government make all these executive orders, getting rid of any and everything all the time. But then the minute we have a piece of success, everybody thinks it's theirs. It goes back to what I was saying when Stevie Wonder started speaking out about police brutality. And then all the white folks jumped in like, after all we've done for you. I'm like, Stevie was blind and could play a bunch of instruments, got a record deal, got a hit with the song Footsteps, blew up, came out with like 50,000, 11 amazing albums, especially that 5-album run he had in the 70s that he did on his own with a Black audience. It just happened to cross over, and then y'all finally discovered him and y'all hopped on ship. But then you also jumped off ship when his music got a little too Black again. And his music's always been Black, but again, you know what I'm saying. Sometimes when our stuff just is a little too down home, folks jump ship, right? So no, there's nothing you did for Stevie. Stevie set himself up to be great, and you appreciated what he did. And the problem is y'all are starting to think that your appreciation is permission, right? And so we're starting to get into that. And so again, people always feel that they're entitled to everything that we have. Anytime we get, mind you, we ain't got nothing. We have a piece of nothing. They want some of that too. They want us just to have the end. They want the enough. Like, come on, be for real. And again, if we're having that conversation, Ryan Coogler gave you Wakanda Forever. And what character did you get in that movie? You got a whole new character introduced. Well, not newly introduced, but as far as having a representation in the film that tells an entire different narrative that can now be spun off into additional films for the Marvel series if they want to. So do not come in here and start trying to all of a sudden act like Black people owe y'all anything, especially after the way y'all moved in November, right? I really don't want to hear it. When y'all were needed, nowhere to be found, because y'all over there having the brass section talking about who, singing and dancing, who y'all gonna vote for. So we saw how that worked out. Shout out to my friend. They made me this wonderful green tea. But yeah, it's kind of like be for real. And I'd also say too, it kind of goes to that space where I was talking about, again, people think they have ownership in all things that we have. Anything that we create for ourselves, everybody wants a piece of, or they want to take credit for, or they find some way to somehow correlate it and rewrite history to make it seem like we couldn't have done it without them. I'm kind of over that stuff. The last thing I would get out of that film is, I think the lesson would be about like letting your discernment stop you from letting foolishness back in, if you know what I'm talking about from that film. I think sometimes, you know, our discernment is telling us everything we need to know about ourselves, or how we need to move, or how we need to do things. And unfortunately, because of emotion or our inquisitiveness, or sometimes even when we just have that like vulnerability and stuff, we sometimes will allow things to come into our spaces that we know don't need to be there. But you know, we sometimes will ignore our discernment. So that's what I got out the film. I don't even know if that's what they intended to do, but that's what I got. Right, I was on this whole life journey lesson watching it. But definitely check out the film. Very great watch. I'm gonna go back and see it in like 4D. You know, 4D is the one where you get in and seats move and stuff. So like if somebody's getting hit upside the head, you getting hit upside the head too, because the seat's like punching. Like I want to go experience that. Let me pause and read some comments, and then we'll go from there. All right. Cindy Bullock said Mac didn't like all that stuff you were talking about. Yeah, look, my other Mac said, "Oh, you go after all I done did for you, you gonna try to just talk about? Okay, we're gonna shut the live down." Couldn't even get a good word in. Man, let's see. Props to you. Thank you. They said props to you new, or props to your old MacBook. Greatest MacBook ever. It was great. I mean, and it still worked. It's just slow. I was like, I can't get anything done on it. But yeah, that MacBook, we from 2012 to the present, we have done great. I'm good at keeping stuff for a long time. Like I told you, I got a new car. I had that same car for like 10 years. I got a new phone as well. I was trying to get everything before these tariffs and stuff start getting in the way. I had that same, I think I had an iPhone 12, I think. And before the iPhone 12, I had an iPhone 6. I think I'd be holding on to stuff like that phone I had for like 3-4 years. I'm good at taking care of stuff long term, right? I think it comes from my father, because my father, even though my parents always had everything we ever needed, they were not fans of just buying stuff to buy stuff. So, man, like I told you, when they bought me my car, I couldn't drive it for 2 years. I had to just walk past it every day. And my dad was like, "It'll teach you to appreciate the car." So, you know, you walking past the car to the bus stop. And I'll always remember when I still had a Black Planet page, I remember writing on the page, like, "Yeah, man, I drive a 2004 Kia Spectra." And I remember this girl had messaged me like, "Well, if you drive a 2004 Kia Spectra," because the picture that I had was me on the school bus. She's like, "Why are you on the bus?" I was like, "Well, excuse me." Right? Let's see here. Am I coming to Texas? Well, I just came from Texas, so probably not. But my brother does live there, and I've been meaning to visit him at some point. So who knows? Somebody said Janet Jackson going to be in concert in Vegas May 21st, 24th, 25th, 26th, 30th, and 31st. I'm broke. I ain't got no more money. I love Janet. I've seen her enough in 2024. I'll catch her on the next tour if she do another one. Like, man. All right. I ain't even got Cowboy Carter tickets yet. And I think the show start tomorrow. Marcel said, "Please don't spoil it. I'm going to see it Thursday." See, I think I did a good job, Marcel. I didn't see no characters. I ain't told y'all what it's about. So yeah, I tried to make sure I didn't spoil it. I was going to actually do a separate video by itself, just going into the film. But that's when I ended up just having the epiphany to go get the MacBook, because I knew I was doing a live, even though clearly we had a rough start. But oh well. Somebody said Ryan Coogler is Ryan Coogler. Let's stop comparing. I agree. Let everybody exist in their own realm. It's the same argument I have when people try to make everybody the next Michael Jackson. Just let artists exist as they are. Like, if, you know, I'm sure at some point, like, because you get it a lot of times with like a Beyonce, and they do the Beyonce versus Michael thing. Beyonce exists in Beyonce land. Michael exists in Michael land. Let them both exist for what it is that they've done. I've always said, as far as entertainers, when you try to look at everybody through a parallel, it's a mess. Look at everybody more so in a spectrum, where everybody has different things that the other may not have, or they may do better than another, but it doesn't negate somebody else's career or somebody else's experience. And we've gotten into this weird era where everything has to be compared. I'm like, let people just be what they want to be. I'm sure at this point, if I'm an artist that, you know, gets signed to a major label or something, yes, I would love the comparisons and stuff, but I want to have my own lane. I don't want to be somebody else's carbon copy. So yeah, there's that. Let's see here. Some inside Hikey Life 2 or 323 said, Clearly, Hollywood is upset because Ryan got the first deal of its kind. It's a West Coast thing ownership. We coming for everything that is ours, and we want it with interest. And Ryan just did that. And the thing is, Ryan is not even the first one to get that deal. That's why I was like, "What y'all mad for?" But again, you know how they like to kind of police things. They some things for some, but nothing for us. That's really what that's about. Let's see. Somebody said they always want us to be their mule. I just need people to stand up on their own. Like, man, we can rock with you when we need to, but everybody at this point, especially in 2025, take care of your community, your collective. Make that your first priority. If there's room for extra, sure, I can stand in solidarity. I can even take a segment on this channel and talk about stuff that I don't think is right. But I'm not erasing or taking priority away from things that matter to me and my community at this moment, especially when I've seen how everybody else moved with ours, right? For all the nonsense that's happening, because people keep saying, where's the black folks, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, most of y'all signed up for this. Not you guys, but y'all know what I'm talking about. A lot of y'all signed up for this. And the part that gets me too is you knew how this would affect other groups of people, but you didn't care. That wasn't the final nail in the coffin to say, no, I can't stand behind this. You knew how this was going to affect different groups of people. You knew exactly what you were getting because they were very upfront with what would happen. And people said that wasn't enough. So yeah, you may be like, oh, I'm not racist, but clearly racism wasn't enough for you to change your mind on how you move. So now it's like, now that we got confirmation of what we've already been thinking and saying for years, good luck. I mean, yeah, good luck, right? And stay out of my way. You know, I can be cordial, but I'm not putting my body and life and livelihood on the line for anybody minus my collective at this point. All right, man. All right, we gotta get to our other topics, y'all. Thank you, Lil Light 3D. What did you just say here? It said, I just got home from the IMAX. Oh, you got the nice viewing. It was Shea Butter popping and screening of Sinners. We showed up and showed out. I enjoyed the movie, and yes, about the cross-generational scene and everything. I thought that was beautifully shot. Like, I was over here just thinking all kind of other things. I'm like, wait a minute, you ain't got no budget money. Relax, sit down. Marcus said, let's see if the Oscars give Sinners any love next year. We'll see. Lyrical Soul says, same. I had an iPhone 10 before. I got the 16 about a month ago. Alan Lewis said, not her saying he can in a Honda. He left in a Toyota. Wait, I missed that. Okay. And I'm sure it's funny with something. Let's see. Joe Mario, I agree with that. There's enough greatness to not overlap, right? Yeah, especially with music. Like, y'all gotta learn to just enjoy it. Everybody wants to have their favorite artist. You have to be the king and the queen of the just enjoy the stuff. That's why we ain't got no options now, because y'all done killed off everybody's career because you only want there to be one or two people out there. Now we all bored to death because we gotta listen to the same three people. Okay, we're gonna move on, folks. Oh God, this. Okay, so like we've been talking about for years, we always talk about the conversation of cementing, and we talk about the conversations around people working to kind of retell narratives. And at this point, we know that there's a conscious effort to, one, strip history out of our reality in the United States, to kind of rewrite things. And I'd also, by the way, recommend for those, I haven't added it to the book club because the book club is on pause until the latter half of the summer, but I definitely suggest reading The Grift by Clay Kane. He does a really, really, really excellent job of just painting out a lot of things historically. So read that when you get a chance. You may reference it a little bit later. But now when you see that with a lot of these executive orders, in addition to the whole DEI cuts and this and that, now you're seeing that they're specifically targeting a lot of things. So even though they're giving us symbolism nuggets, at the same time, systemically and structurally and through policy, they're gutting additional things. So we've seen at this point with the Smithsonian, now museums are also under attack, right? And so you have the National Museum of African American History and Culture, where artifacts and exhibits are being removed from the museum, which is why I said on the last live, go there while you can, because stuff is going to start changing. I'm going to read a piece of this article, and then we're going to go a little bit deeper because I got a few people to drag. So let me just go to this one really quick. Some artifacts removed from African American History Museum after executive order, right? Remember, this is the most pro-black president, folks claim, right? Mr. Pro-black, like he claimed, that no one's done more for the blacks than me, right? A civil rights activist and pastor said he was notified that 2 artifacts he loaned to the museum would be returned to him. Nearly 1 month after President Trump issued an executive order targeting DC area museums, some artifacts are already being removed. Several artifacts are being removed from the National Museum of African American History and Culture, according to the owners of the artifacts. The removals come after the Trump administration issued an executive order to remove pieces of history from the Smithsonian museums. The owners of some historical objects inside the museum tell News 4 their items are being wiped from the displays. Some visitors were shocked to see some gone, saying they strategically planned their visits to be able to see the most artifacts in case some were removed. Also, some were actually trying to get there before stuff was snatched up. Civil rights activist Reverend Amos Brown says he was recently notified 2 of the artifacts he loaned to the museum would be returned back to him. He described one of the books written by Reverend George Washington Williams in 1880 as a precious and most historic book and the first history of the Negro race. The other book was a Bible he took demonstrations with. The other was a Bible he took to demonstrations with Martin Luther King Jr. and Jesse Jackson. Brown said he lent the artifacts to the Smithsonian in 2016. He said the museum always gave him the option of donating books permanently or renewing a loan, but this time he wasn't asked. It was a downright dishonest and demeaning, Brown said. I hope people of goodwill, of good conscience, and common sense will rise up and say we need to stop this. Jeff Anderson, a tourist from Louisiana, hoped to see the museum before any changes were made. It's a shame that the fear of Black people finding out their history has caused that kind of thing, Anderson said. Others who have visited the museum before the removals can point out the recent changes. Aaron Weaver, a Virginia resident, said the Smithsonian board needs to step up, plain and simple. I know certain exhibits that were missing, like Nat Turner's Bible was one, Weaver said. Woolworth, the Greensboro Massacre table, that was missing as well, but the digital display was still there. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Linda St. Thomas, this is a white woman, the Smithsonian Institute's chief spokesperson, and she's been around since 1976, released a statement in response to visitors seeing artifacts being removed from exhibits. The Greensboro, North Carolina lunch counter is not leaving the Smithsonian. It is on display at the National Museum of American History, where it has been for many years. The National Museum of African American History and Culture also has 2 stools from the original counter. One is on exhibit at all times. The other rotates so that they can properly be preserved. The Bible book belonged to Reverend Brown of San Francisco, who generously loaned them to the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture for an exhibition. The loan agreement expires in May, and the items are being returned to the owner, which is standard museum practice. The curator called and wrote Reverend Brown. With regard to the loan, the museum added, as a part of our commitment to responsible stewardship, we will continue to honor all loan agreements, including the timely return of objects that will go back to the owner. What's being done is trying to whitewash our history, Weaver said. You can't whitewash the African American experience because it is the American experience. I want to say this about that whole loan and the contract setup. They're saying and moving in the same way that they've been doing with the federal government. So with the federal government, a lot of the contracts that have been pulled, it's not that they have been like, let me rephrase this. What's happening now is with the federal government on that side, there's a lot of contracts that are up for renewal. And these are contracts that have been renewed every year for decades and decades. There's people who work in certain companies that, have been contracted with the federal government for decades. People have been in the same career for 30, 40, 50 years, one step from retirement. And because of Doge and that nonsense, now all of a sudden, all these different contracts are being pulled. So like Deloitte just got like a multi-billion-dollar contract yanked with the Department of Defense. There's all these different contracts that are being pulled and just not renewed. So what's happening with this museum, the cover up or the shiny language is just saying, oh no, it's just that it's time for us to send it back because the contract ended. When in reality, all of these artifacts have been in that museum since it opened back in September of 2016. It's just a magical coincidence that all of a sudden portions of a lunch counter and a Bible from 1880 are being shipped back to the rightful owners. Because normally that doesn't, so foolery, playing somebody else's face, right? And they made it, and I get it too. And the thing too with the museum, the challenge that they have is they can't shake the table too much. Like Smithsonian has to kind of keep it light and bright. Now, they do get a lot of funding from donors, but they also do get a significant portion of funding from the federal government. And so they're kind of in a catch-22 where they can't shake the table because you see how the current president is moving. You got states not even getting FEMA funding, right? Or disaster relief or emergency funding. The funniest, well, it's not funny because there's people that are collateral to it, but look at Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I was going to say tap dancing, but she was already white. All that foolery she engaged with the current president, right? all that nonsense, her jumping onto all those stupid talking points and the CRT this and the woke that and the DEI that and so on and so forth. And then her state got hit by all those tornadoes in March. And they need money to go in and fix it. And what did the Trump administration say? No, we're not giving you no money. Why do I keep, let me put this down. I keep looking at my old camera here and it's not here. Sorry. And so, yeah, we're not giving you no money. Use your state funding to figure it out. In a state that's already struggling. On top of the fact that there's not any money to go and pull and just magically fix tornado relief, because tornado season does not stop in April. You know, it goes from January well into almost the summer. And then there's still tornadoes year round. And so now you're going to have to pull funding out of other pools of money to kind of create that disaster relief. And you know, the first thing they're going to pull from is the schools, right? And so, you know, and Sarah has literally wrote a letter begging, hey, we need it. Trump said, nope, ain't getting it. We get to North Carolina, everything that happened after the hurricane from a few months back, right? They need it. Nope, not getting it. Nope. And nope. Everything is no. You figure it out. You know, they already want to get rid of FEMA. They want to leave it to the states. And unfortunately, every state doesn't have the same revenue and cash flow. And so going back to the museums and the Smithsonian, there's tons of Smithsonian institutes. Like you have the Museum of Natural Sciences, American History. They're building the Latino Heritage Museum. There's the Native American. Like there's all these different museums. And so because all of these museums, minus, I guess, the Museum of Natural Sciences and the Air and Space Museum and maybe the American History Museum, everything else falls under that bubble of DEI, of all these different marginalized groups that have representation, or the African Art Museum, all these different museums that represent something that clearly is under attack. They're not going to shake the table too much because they don't want to mess up the money. So now it's a catch-22 where it's like, unfortunately, a lot of these institutions have to cave to the nonsense to stay funded. So we're about to start getting a very watered down version of history, which is wild to me. And it doesn't stop with that museum. I want to go to another one that's also dealing with the same thing. This is out of Louisiana. Lord, make it make sense. A plantation museum spotlighting the truths of slavery has lost federal grants in furtherance of the president's agenda. Going back to what I was saying about those grants, what's happening is, as it's time for new money to be renewed, they're just not renewing it and just saying, oh no, it's run its course. And they're trying to paint it as if this is just normal. This is what we always do. It's not, right? Louisiana's Whitney Plantation, open since 2014 as a museum dedicated to the education about the legacy of slavery in the U.S., lost its federal grants as a result of Trump's attacks on DEI. Unfortunately, the government's efforts to erase Black history continue, with the most recent victim being Louisiana's Whitney Plantation. The former plantation turned museum dedicated to educating the public about the history and legacies of slavery in the U.S. had previously received 2 grants from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. However, The Guardian reports that the IMLS, an organization designed to provide resources and support for libraries, museums, and archives across the country, has terminated the museum for the museum at Whitey Plantation. The cancellation is the latest blow in a string of moves by the Trump administration targeting diversity and equity initiatives, including cultural spaces that prioritize Black stories and historical truth. The Whitney Plantation was reportedly notified of termination in a letter from Keith Sonderling, the acting director. Upon further review, IMLS has determined that your grant is unfortunately no longer consistent with the agency's priorities and no longer serves the interests of the United States and the IMLS program, Sondering wrote, per The Guardian. IMLS is repurposing its funding allocations in a new direction in furtherance of the president's agenda. The letter cited a March 14th executive order from Trump that mandates the elimination of all non-statutorily required activities and functions of the IMLS, a directive from the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, Elon. The order gave IMLS just 1 week to begin dismantling itself to the maximum extent consistent with the applicable law. It's disturbing, Ashley Rogers, executive director of the Plantation Museum, said. These grants like ours are going to small museums who are doing good work in the communities. The Whitney Plantation, which opened in 2014 as the first U.S. plantation turned museum exclusively focused on enslaved people's lives, labor, and legacies, was set to receive funding for an upcoming exhibit on resistance to slavery. That project, which has been in development for 3 years, was scheduled to open in January 2026. But now, without the second half of its funding, the Whitney Plantation stands to lose $55,000. Though the plantation and its grant partners can reportedly appeal the IMLS decision, Rogers explained how frustrating the decision has been, noting that her request to receive the last of the funds from the grant in March had been approved a day before receiving a letter of its termination. All right. A little bit more. It's enormously frustrating, she continued. It's a true waste of funds to have invested all this time and money into a project that can't go over the finish line because the government has already paid for most of the funds that they committed. This isn't the first time Trump has set his sights on Black historical institutions. Earlier this year, his administration was widely criticized for targeting the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, cutting back its programming and questioning its objectivity. For institutions committed to telling the full, unvarnished truth of the country's past, the threat is ongoing and very real. To think that the history of African Americans in the South, the history of slavery, does not align with the priorities of the United States is concerning. So, like we said, they're moving, they cementing, they locking this in. They said, and the crazy part is, it's literally holding the wallet over the heads of all these institutions that are here to educate. And we purposely educate to enlighten so that history does not repeat itself. But clearly, they want certain things to repeat itself. Let me take a break and read some comments. And then I'll finish my point here. All right. I got to get used to looking here. I normally have the camera thing there, but it's fine. All right. Let's see. Where are we at here? Does Calvin think we're in a constitutional crisis yet? Once Patel was locked into the FBI and confirmed, I said that's it. Because at this point, even if, and we've seen them defy court orders, who's going to enforce it? If you have a Department of Justice that's compromised and an FBI that's compromised, who is actually going to regulate anybody in the executive branch? The only saving grace would be things at the state level. But then they're just petty and they pull funding from the state. So again, just like Alan said, exactly, we were warning y'all and they didn't care. And I'm really not trying to be the I told you so person, because I'm sure folks are tired of hearing it, but damn it, I told you so. Like, man, I literally just saw a post of something I was saying a year ago where I was talking about how somebody had reposted it. I was doing somebody's podcast, and the segment was talking about how I was talking about how we keep moving as if we'll have the same opportunities every 4 years to just go and fix things. We don't know what we're about to get into. So everybody buckle up. All right. Let's see. Somebody said, I'm trying to get to the museum before the worst of it all. We need to protect our history. And now, this is why I think it's really important that people continue to archive and document things. For everybody who's a content creator or a collector or a buyer, whatever you do, this is why you kind of lock in and hold on to everything. Remember how I told you guys one of the projects I've been doing for like the last 4 years is archiving a bunch of stuff from the internet? Like anytime I see a clip on YouTube that I like, I save it like permanently and keep it, because everything is always getting yanked and pulled around. And it goes in the same conversation with history as well, because they're going to do everything in their power to rewrite history. And I'm going to get to that in a second, but like that's literally where we're at. And so I definitely did a review of that museum when it first opened. So you can go dig way back into the Calvin Michaels videos from, I think, 2016. And I give a full grasp of what was there. And mind you, the museum had enhanced itself, but there's so many artifacts in there that I'm afraid are going to also be targets. Like that museum has Emmett Till's casket. And when you get the backstory of even how that happened, Emmett Till's family initially was trying to have a museum for Emmett Till. Funding, finances, things like that were a little weird. Smithsonian was like, hey, we'll step in and, why don't we do this? You give us the casket and everything. We'll make sure that he has his own segment specifically in the museum that's like a permanent fixture there, right? And so when you go to that museum, when you go into the segment where his casket is, it's even set up where you can't talk. You, out of respect for the family, it's like very silent. It feels like you're actually in, I wouldn't say the church, but I feel like it feels like you're in the funeral home. And then they have like documentary videos playing of the family talking about what happened and all these different details and everything. There's like benches and pews and things like that. There's so many things that are in that museum. There's elements of slave ships that have sunk or that have sank, and there's pieces that are in there. There's a wall that I love to reference. And I say that because there's a whole lot of folks who have convinced themselves that the transatlantic slave trade never happened. I'm like, y'all need to get off the internet and stop reading these memes with the big letters. Like it makes no sense, some of the viewpoints that folks have, when all the tangible evidence is right there and in multiple places with multiple sources. But they have this wall that has all of the documentation of a lot of the ships that were transporting enslaved people, where it has how many people were on board, how many made it and how many didn't, like as far as what perished and what year and what date did this boat go on this voyage and so on and so forth. There's so much in that museum. Just the first 5 floors alone if you ever go, you're gonna be pissed off, by the way. You're gonna be mad until you get to them top two floors when it finally gets to the happy stuff. Because I mean, there's so much in there. And in this current phase we're in with the nonsense, I'm surprised they didn't just say close the first five floors and just keep the music floor open. But you got to put Elvis in there. Like, I'm surprised we ain't got to there yet. I don't want to put it in the universe, but it's a lot, right? I agree, Piscean Beauty. They said, I'm just glad they didn't destroy the items. And I'm still weary about that too. So I hope things are, man, make it make sense, right? What up, Nan? Somebody said, good evening, Calvin. While we're on the topic of preserving our history, I hope that we take care to support African-American historians and their specific academic work. We all have a role to play. Yeah, I'm telling you, like, especially a lot of these PhD students and doctors who are doing like research, or a lot of these college professors who their specific role they teach, but they're more so like if professors that work at research institutions, like R1 institutions, where they specifically research, like really start paying attention and locking into the stuff that they're releasing and publishing. Because at this point, in this era of information, you can try all you want to try to erase who we are or what we do. But there's too much of it that's already out there. There's too much that's already locked in. So in this moment in time, this is why I say like lock in, start getting familiar with like different, authors and different books, and, watch content just that kind of enlightens you a little bit, because they're going to start gaslighting us. In the same way where I say so many people have given so many inches to nonsense. Like I said, now they've been given miles and they're running a marathon on all of us. And we're all kind of collateral at the moment until there's somewhat of a shift. And a lot of this is not really changed until white people get tired, and they're not tired yet. Right. I don't know what clip I saw, but it was from one of those rallies they had. And it was a bunch of white people trying to sing the Negro spirituals and couldn't sing it right. And I said, yeah, we're going to be here for a while, because they were out there. Ain't going to let nobody turn me around. And then it was this white girl who decided to turn me around, turn me. I'm like, y'all ain't even singing it with conviction. I don't believe y'all. Like I'm not feeling it, right? And so, yeah, they're not mad enough. Now you're starting to see the town halls get a little bit more violent. You're starting to see people speak out more, but they're still collectively not mad enough, because a lot of them are still moving as individuals, and they're only mad about the things that are affecting them. Until it gets to a point where that collective understands that democracy as a whole is kind of just wherever it's going to be, we're going to be in this for a while, because they have the voting power to change stuff. And they also have, unfortunately, the wealth and a lot of other things. Like, I mean, it's where we're at right now. And until they get tired, we're going to kind of be in this for a while. You're watching so many things just kind of slide by through the hands of white America, because they just aren't challenging anything. So here we are, right? A lot of these marches are more so symbolic than as far as actually meaning anything. And that's why they're out there. They're spending more time working on the signs that they're going to hold and post. And then they make a nice little Instagram post and they think they changed the world. They ain't pissed enough yet. So until then, and before anybody tries to say, well, what about y'all? What are y'all doing? We've been doing it. But clearly everybody said, F y'all. So we said, okay, well, since y'all got us in this one, y'all got it. Black people are no longer putting their bodies on the line for this. Because the difference that you have seen when we were talking about that summer of 2020, you saw we was getting tear gas, and people was getting the eyes hit out with rubber bullets, and police were running over people with cars, and even white folks were deputizing themselves to go out and fight, right? You had that aspect, but then you also had that symbolic piece where people thought because officers took a knee or people held hands that everything was all good, and folks was bringing out the grills and electric slide and everything else. And so it's just, the mission has been lost. I think I told you guys, I stopped going to marches after 2015, because I was like, all right, you know what? But I remember the very last one I went to, I was standing out there, and I was so mad because the news cameras caught me. I was like not trying to be on TV, and they got me right on Fox 5, right here on the side of my face. But while I was standing out there, it's like this older white woman comes up to me, right? And she's like, you're my brother. You're my brother. And that's lovely. That's nice, but we're not here for that. Like we're the symbolism is beautiful. Yes, kumbaya, hands across America. But right now, I don't need your affirmation that you can tolerate my existence. I know you mean well, but we're coming after a systemic issue. So you coming with your individual compliment doesn't fix the bigger problem. But thank you, I guess. And the weird thing is, she probably went to work and told everybody how she changed the world. Right. And she wouldn't stop saying it to me. Like, she wanted to hold my hand and stuff. I'm like, will you get away from me? Like, man, you go talk to your family. Right. That's the issue. Right. Y'all got all these rules. Y'all can't even talk about politics or nothing at the Thanksgiving table because y'all want to keep everybody comfortable. That's the problem we got now. This is exactly why we're at where we're at. I just what shows I listen to? Because I like Urban View on XM. That's a great station to listen to as well. But there was somebody on there saying how people who are pissed off about everything that has happened, we have to be more considerate of the feelings of people who allowed all this to happen. And I'm like, why do y'all make everything about feelings when it's the oppressing side that's doing the wrong? We got to worry about how they feel. They didn't feel no kind of way messing us up or messing up our lives. You got people now nervous about their Social Security being yanked. You got people who, God forbid, their portfolios. The stock market is a roller coaster every day at this point. You're watching people literally who are citizens get deported to countries they've never been to. Get deported to places where they don't even speak the language. The craziest story I just saw was the undocumented mother and the son. Now, the son was born here. The son was 4. They got deported to whatever country they got deported to. The son has stage 4 cancer and had all the different medications and everything. They deported the son. Now, mind you, the son is a citizen because they were born here. Son was deported with the mama. No access to medication, no paperwork, no documentation or anything to go to that next doctor. I'm not trying to kill off the child, but if we're talking reality when it comes to treatment and stage 4 cancer, can we be honest here? And so you're just seeing the vileness of all of it. And so, again, I'm not here to keep people comfortable because nobody cares about our comfortability. No, even with the museums. If white people were the good people that they think they are, they'd be out in the streets fighting to make sure our museums are good. But none of them are saying anything. They're fine. They are fine with all this. They're fine with all these people who've lost their jobs. They're fine with what's happening with healthcare. The fact that, cancer research has been yanked from the NIH. The fact that research around sickle, like we just did a live maybe a year ago where we talked about the breakthrough in sickle cell research. And sickle cell disproportionately affects Black Americans before anybody else. Seeing that research get yanked, right? Trials and stuff being canceled. But instead, you got crazy RFK, who sounds like he swallowed a bag of rocks, some sharp ones, talking about y'all got till September to find a correlation between vaccines and autism. Like, you have people who are not even scientists telling the scientists what they need to research because he has an epiphany. And it's like, y'all can have this vaccine conversation, but at the same time, are we going to sit here and not act like there's all this processed stuff in the food, that you get the red dye, that there's all these toxins in the air? On the last slide, we talked about even the cutting back of regulation when it comes to air quality in a lot of areas. And when we're talking about zoning laws and how those have been changed, and you got schools next to factories and stuff in the water, there's so much stuff out there. But again, RFK got it. He knows more than everybody. So make it make sense. So that's why I'm like, I'm not here for nobody's feelings. This is so far beyond feelings, right? You just gonna have to be in your feeling, get over it. I don't know what to tell you. And it just goes back to what I was saying. So I say all that to say, there's an effort to kind of dumb down the next 2 generations. Because if you can get 2 generations to be dumbed down, then you can really lock into things. Look at what's happened with Gen Z. Now, I will say Gen Z is kind of split into 2 segments. There's older Gen Z that still kind of moves in the same space that millennials do. And then there's the younger Gen Z. Now, when we get to younger Gen Z, specifically white boys in Gen Z, that demographic has latched on to the red pill bro, fresh and fit Myron Gaines. We hate women. We hate everything. We have no empathy. Our strength is the fact that we want everyone to suffer, and we'll pretend that it doesn't affect us. And if our mom dies, we won't cry because we're so strong. That segment of that demographic, they God bless them. I don't know what's in the water with them, but that's a lost group right there. That latter half of Gen Z. Too much influence with the wrong things, right? Charlie Kirk is a hero to them, right? Nick Fuentes, hero to them. And that's just in a handful of years. And so imagine more people like a Nick Fuentes and Charlie Kirk and the Myron Gaines and all of them that keep getting bigger platforms, and there's more of them, and they're able to consistently continue to put information out over the next 5 to 6 years. Imagine how much of an effect that will have on the voter electorate for those that are up and coming, especially when you've taken things out of the museum. You've altered and changed the school curriculums. Prime example, I want to highlight, y'all know I always got a fact ready. Let me go to, even when we're talking about what's happening in, what state is this? Ryan Walters, right? So we're talking about social studies curriculum. Can I get the actual state? I want to make sure I have the right state here. This is, Oklahoma. Yes. Oklahoma, also the very state where every single district put Orange Man in, every single one, right? Even when we're talking history, let me pull this back up. It just closed. remember when we did the conversation about McGraw-Hill and how the textbooks are purchased and how you can literally have the same story, but it's going to be told differently in California versus Texas, and how what ends up happening is normally McGraw-Hill has their version of the book that's written, and they sell it to every state, to every school district. And then depending on where you're at, it go, actually, I want to make sure I get this quoted right. I don't want to be up here saying it wrong. So let me pull up my notes that I already have in my phone just to be on ready. I want to just make sure I have it right. Yes, this is what I want. Boom, here we go. All right, give me 1 sec. Give me the order, please. I want the order, people. Give me the order. Okay, here we go. So here's the difference between California and Texas. I don't see my segment on how it explains how they purchase it, but long story short, McGraw-Hill sells the books to the different states. Different states already have their state boards that are elected, and a lot of times when we're talking education, these are not people who are educators. These are just regular everyday folks who've been elected to these positions. They look through the textbook and say, we don't like this, we don't like that, change that, change that, change that. It's sent back to McGraw-Hill. McGraw-Hill makes the new edits. They send it back to the state. The state says, okay, we love this, we love that, but can you take that out? They send it back up, take some more stuff out, send it back down. Then they say, great, we love this. They seal it in, they sell it to the different school districts, and it goes from that realm. And that's how like the same topics can have different approaches. So then here's the perfect example. Let's go to California. California states that enslaved women face sexual violence from owners and overseers, right? And then in that same aspect, that's not even in the Texas history books. Let me see. What else did I have on here? Texas says, this is the state of Texas. Texas says that white Southerners oppose Reconstruction because of tax increases as well as racial resentment. California instead includes primary source quotations from Black historical figures about white resistance to civil rights, right? What's another example? California notes that the suburban dream of the 1950s was inaccessible to many African Americans. And it states that reasons for suburban growth varied. Some people wished to escape crime and congestion of the city. Others believed that suburbs offered a better life and more affordable experience. The GI Bill and the government's decision to give income tax deductions for mortgage and property tax payments for homeownership was more attractive than ever. Between 1940 and 1960, the percentage of Americans who owned their homes rose from 41% to 61%. Texas brings no conversation of that. California and Texas textbooks sometimes offer different explanations for white backlash to Black advancement after the Civil War, from Reconstruction to housing discrimination in the 20th century. White resistance to Black progress is covered differently in two sides. Let's see here. So in Texas, they talk about white flight was more so because people had a desire to get away from culturally diverse neighborhoods. Right, as opposed to the other element where people thought that their property values would go down if Black people moved in the neighborhood. Let's see. Yeah, we could be here all day. All right. Anyway, let me stay to my point. But anyway, so the goal again, water down history, strip it all down, and then keep it 2 generations foolish so that they can endorse the same nonsense. Because we're watching history now repeat itself, right? We're watching things that we thought we were so far past come right back to our doorstep. So even going back to them getting rid of or gutting the Department of Education, we already knew that one aspect was to privatize K-12 education because there's so much money to be made when you have 40 million plus kids that are in K-12 institutions, money to be made. But the other aspect too, because again, they painted it to be that the Department of Education was making the curriculum and indoctrinating the children when they don't even make curriculums. Their job, like we've talked about, was more so about the conversation of accessibility. Their job was more so about making sure that states that did not have the revenue in their budget, making sure that states would still be funded enough to support their schools, making sure that every child has access to an adequate education. Now, it was still somewhat of a flawed system because every kid did not have the best access to education, because when we get to that state level and the conversation of zip code, depending on where you live and what the wealth is in your zip code, it's centered around property taxes. So if you're living in 90210, of course, you have amazing, 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 amazing schools. But you know what? If you're living in that 2000001, zip code, schools might still be decent, but it might not be the same cash flow floating around. And, so it's just, there's so many things. And then again, accessibility, making sure that students that are special needs are accounted for and included, and that there are programs for them. One of the main reasons why we had to have that was because there was a time period where people who weren't once special needs were sent away. Right? Right here in DC, they got sent to Elizabeth, right? Or St. Elizabeth. Like there was a time period where people who were deemed as not normal, and I don't like to use that phrase, but that's how people painted it at that time, they were sent away. Society didn't want to deal with a lot of folks, so you just pushed them out. Like even outside of the U.S., look at the royals. You know, they had all that inbreeding, and you had them two twins that had whatever condition they had, and they sent them away to some home far away. I saw that on The Crown. Thought y'all was slick. Talking about superior genes and genetics. So y'all just gonna keep reproducing with each other, and then you wonder why all the kids coming out messed up. But in addition to that, again, the conversation of accessibility, people who are disabled, making sure that there's accommodations, people who have different learning disabilities. There's so many things that were included with the Department of Education. That also includes what happened with FAFSA and subsidizing school prices for those in college and so on and so forth. All of that, you know, is right now kind of just on the line, right? And so the idea is to keep people just foolish. And the crazy part is, it's not even just going to be with the up and coming generations, because there are people even in our current generation that already got it wrong. So can I go and drag RG3 for a quick minute? Because I meant to get him and I forgot to. So way back when, a few weeks ago, because every day is an extremity in this country at the moment, when they were yanking the Jackie Robinson bit out of the historical conversations too, and everybody was mad, and then they had to put it back, and they're like, oh, it was just a mistake. We didn't mean to take him out. RG3 couldn't wait to open his mouth. Because him and Terry Crews, it's nothing like people who jump the gun and go out of their way to be in the way. So anyway, he made this tweet where he says, sports shows on TV should be about sports, not politics. Then he goes on to say, this tweet is not about Jackie Robinson. His significance can never and should never be erased. Breaking the color barrier in baseball itself is not political. Jesse Owens winning 4 gold medals in itself was not political. Jack Johnson being the first black boxing heavyweight champ in itself was not political. They all had political ramifications. They all challenged the status quo of racial barriers to fair play, race relations, and civil rights. That should always be acknowledged and never forgotten. They shouldn't be used as an excuse to push political agendas on sports shows on national television to an audience to consume sports content. Now, he just gave us this very, we are the world, let's just not talk about race and leave it alone. And somehow none of this was political. And I'm like, see, this is what happens when people open their mouth and don't have the range for the conversation. Because I'm sorry, racism is very political. Our whole politics is centered around the idea of racism. Everything that exists, the reason the United States cannot be the country that it could be in comparison to others that are now advancing beyond what it is that we've been able to do is because of racism. We literally have watched programs and services and ideas for innovation get thrown in the trash because too many people who were not white were going to benefit. We literally watched healthcare, the idea of universal healthcare back in the 60s, get dismissed because it meant that black folks would get healthcare too. So they said, no, we'll just keep it privatized. And now you guys are wondering why you got these $1,000 deductibles because you bumped your head on the wall, right? We watched state-funded schools all of a sudden have a tuition price once schools were integrated. Right? Because state schools were free at one point in time. And even the ones that weren't free, you only paying about $200 a year. We already went through what it used to cost to go to the University of Maryland in the 70s. And so all of these different advancements that were once there and these opportunities that were there, the United States kept saying, nope, because that means they're going to get a piece of something. So absolutely not. Nope. And so we've watched so many moments where there was an opportunity for innovation and for growth get dismissed because racism. I mean, even politically. Right? In this last election, one candidate didn't even have a platform. They just had concepts of a plan for healthcare and they ran on hatred and spite, and we just gonna get everybody. And that's more, just trust me, I got it. The other had to jump through hurdles and had to do all kind of things and so on. And it wasn't good enough, right? Because that racism kicked in, plus the sexism aspect, right? But no, race has always been political, has always been, right? And the thing that's crazy to me, I'll just get to these people here, right? Let's just talk sports for a minute, because I'm going to segue this to the Sanders kid in a second too, right? So to me, there's a reason white voters have always collectively voted the way they do. And like we said, the only time white America moves as a collective is when it's time to be racist. Other than that, they move as individuals. But the inertia and the element of power that they feel when they can collectively move to oppress another group of people, they're never going to let that go. And so that happens with sports. Right. And so the challenge with sports is that black athletes dominated. Right. So and I'm sticking with the 3 people he mentioned, Jack Johnson, Jackie Robinson, Jesse Owens. Right. With sports, it's no secret. Black people dominate sports. And the ones that we don't dominate is just because there hasn't been access yet. Let us get some rugby fields out in Baltimore and watch some kids own all of rugby. Okay, golf, give it a minute, right? Let gymnastics find its way into the inner city, right? Give it a minute. We'll dominate every sport. But they recognize that Black athletes tend to dominate all these sports. And we know that with sports and athleticism, it's seen as power. It's seen as being quick-witted. It's seen as having your own agency, which is something they have never really wanted us to have. And so it pisses them off when we excel in those spaces, right? And so what white America has always done to kind of counterbalance that talent or that extraordinary skill that exists with athletes is they use their power to always make sure an athlete stays in their place, right? Sports is seen, like I said, as a sign of strength and agency. And again, that's something we're not supposed to have. We're not supposed to have agency over anything. This is why when a movie like Sinners does really well, everybody's like, well, you didn't have this group in it. What? Okay, fine. Because now we got to go above and beyond and make sure that, in order to get the accolades, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, right? And so because we don't own the spaces that we play in as far as athletes, and we don't own these agencies, and there's not a lot of owners in the NFL. I remember everybody was hyping up when Jay-Z did the deal with the NFL and the Inspire Change, and he was going to have ownership. And everybody's like, yeah, he about to own the team. I'm like, no, that number was under 1%. He can't even say what color the jerseys are going to be. They just told him, you shut up and pick the entertainment for halftime, right? And y'all sell some T-shirts to inspire change. But yeah, and so what ends up happening is because a lot of these spaces that we're in, they're still seen as positions of servitude, even though these are athletic positions and they're winning these games and stuff, they're still seen in positions of servitude. And so that's kind of where they want to kind of keep us. And so the reality is they're amazed by the talent, but they hate that it's us that do it. So this is why somebody like Serena Williams always got so much smoke from the world. One of the best, if not one of the best athletes in the world, period. But look at how much smoke she always got. Same thing with LeBron. LeBron opens the school, and now all of a sudden everybody hates LeBron because he opened the school. Same thing with Simone Biles. When Simone Biles got the twisties and couldn't do them Olympics, you saw the way folks moved. Folks that can't even walk up and down stairs without an oxygen mask got so much to say about Simone. They're cussing that girl out. Why? Because they felt like we own your livelihood and you're supposed to perform for us. We don't care that, you're having this moment where these twisties will affect how you perform, and you might break your neck if you land on the little piece of wood the wrong way. Never mind that. You need to make us look great. And so what ends up happening is a lot of times with athletes, when they do speak out, we see that they get punished. We saw what happened with Kaepernick, but even when you go back to John Carlos and Tommy Smith and what's the other guy? Peter Norman. Can I tell you what's wild? So when we go back to that Olympics, it was already a mess to begin with. It was Mexico City. There was already protests about that because they literally destroyed people's homes to build the sports arenas, and the people who were not very wealthy or people who were working poor, working class, got pushed out and unhoused for this 2 or 3 week ceremony. So there was all that stuff happening. It's 1968. We got a whole lot of different things happening in Black America and in the United States, as well as the civil unrest. And so we already know you have the protests, right? We already know you have John Carlos and Tommy Smith. They raised the fist during the playing of the national anthem after they won the races. Everybody's mad. But you know what's crazier? Peter Norman, the white guy, right? One of them had forgot their gloves. So Peter Norman actually gave them their gloves to use. That's why both of them only had one glove on their hand. Australia. This is how strong whiteness works. Australia was so pissed when they found out that you gave them the glove. What? Right? Peter Norman was banned from all track and field in Australia because that was where he was from. He was banned from everything, died poor. They were just by the association of being next to the two of them and giving them the gloves to speak up for their own community. Done. They got Peter Norman up out of there. You don't get to come to that country. And mind, this is in Mexico, but you don't get to sit here in a line with those people and think you're going to have a shot. Done. Right? That man died destitute, broke. They stripped his records of everything. They act like he does not exist. Okay. So again, crazy. Now let's get to the 3 people he mentioned, since apparently sports is not political. Jesse Owens. All right. Now this is the guy, 4 gold medals, 1936 Berlin Olympics. That was the Olympics where Hitler was there and everything like that. What people need to understand is even though he had all these accolades, he still had to be a Black American living in the U.S. So even after he became an Olympic gold medalist, he still had to sit in the back of the bus and was put in his place many, many times. FDR did not invite him to the White House. You know, this is the same FDR we love to praise for the New Deal and everything else and kind of bringing back the U.S. economy, where we've already talked about how Black folks weren't included in that, right? But he was not invited to the White House. He didn't even get a congratulations. And again, I've always said that a lot of white Americans have an inferiority complex, especially when it's parallel to like Black talent. You got to also understand FDR couldn't barely, you know, he could barely walk. He had polio and everything. So I'm sure there was an insecurity about seeing somebody like a Jesse Owens who can sprint and break all these records. And then FDR can't get up the stairs. You know, he feels some kind of way. So no, that he ain't coming to the White House. He ain't getting no congratulations from me. So you have that. But this is how wild it gets. So even a year before he got to the Olympics, when we go back to 1935, Jesse Owens set 3 world records on May 25th of 1935. Set the records. Like, he became the standard of what people measured up against, right? And so he did it in 45 minutes, which is wild to me. 3 different records. And this is when he was at Ohio State University. He was only 22 years old. And here's what's wild. Even after doing all that, the university still never really welcomed him with open arms. He never had an athletic scholarship. He was not allowed to live on campus for obvious reasons. Everything is segregated. And so even after he won the gold medals the next year in the 1936 Olympics, the U.S. Olympic Committee withdrew his amateur status and banned him from competing in any more amateur competitions, which automatically ended his college career. Because, you know, as far as college athletes, especially back then, they're not seen as professional athletes. They're seen as amateurs. And so his college career abruptly ends. Do you guys know that 4 months after he just won all these gold medals, broke world records, became somebody that we're talking about right now, he was working as a janitor, right? He was also working at the gas station 4 months later. And he was reprimanded for speaking out about it, because he pretty much said, I can't live off gold medals. I got to pay my bills. And so, you know, because he wasn't really getting a lot of endorsements, the opportunities didn't come. And a lot of that had to do with white resentment towards Jesse Owens, because when they think about greatness and that idea of American exceptionalism, we're not a part of that conversation. They want that to be them. So even though they're happy that America got the medal, they hate who's the face of it. And so here comes this guy who has done all this, and look how he's still treated. Now when he gets back home, they treat him even worse, because they don't want him to feel empowered or anything like that, because that means, oh no, you start to feel yourself too much because you weren't supposed to have this to begin with. So when he's talking about, so when RG3 is talking about sports is not political, oh, it's very political. It's very political. That's Jesse Owens. Then we get to Jackie Robinson. Now we already know baseball, he helps integrate the Major League Baseball, but of course we know he dealt with a whole lot of nonsense, to the point where he had to put a metal plate in his hat just in case somebody threw the ball at his face when he was batting, right? You know, he had to protect himself because other players would often wear metal cleats and purposely try to slide into his shins every single time. He was court-martialed for not sitting at the back of the bus, right? And then later down the line, he was criticized for speaking out. This man died young. He died at 53. And a lot of people feel that it's a lot of the complications dealing with the stress of always just being very locked into a lot of things. Like, understand, politics and race go hand in hand. And when you throw sports in it, in that conversation, people thinking they own us, it just gets wilder. And then the wildest part is, I was like, RG3, you're going to bring up Jack Johnson for real? Of all people to help me prove my point. Now, Jack Johnson, if you remember, he became the first heavyweight champion of the United States or the world in 1908, which already pissed off a lot of white folks, because dang it, boxing too, we're supposed to be the fighters, not y'all. Like, that's how they looked at it. And it didn't help, you know, Jack Johnson had a few white women on the side, so that was really pissing him off. Like, and you're taking our women too. And so, you know, he gets the heavyweight title in 1908. He actually retires. He goes and lives his life. He lives off his money. He's doing great. And then there's this guy, Jack London, who feels some kind of way because he wants somebody else to have that title, right? Because at this point, Jack Johnson was the most hated man in America. Hated. White folks hated this man. They were not amazed by the talent. I mean, they were, but this is when they started having all the therapies about Darwinism, and we got some kind of beast-like genetics that make us stronger, and so on and so forth. And so the Jack London guy was trying to convince him to come out of retirement and go and fight this other guy, Jeffries. And it was on purpose, because they figured, well, now that he's out of shape, he hasn't fought in 2 years, he'll lose. And then that title will go back to us. And so Jeffries was excited to get to the fight. So Jack Johnson said, all right, I'll come get this fight, but y'all gonna have to pay me. So they paid him $120,000, which, can we do the math here? Let's see, how much was that worth back in the day? I know it's at least probably 4 times as much. 120,000. Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's 2013. Let's see. What's the big money? Okay, so $120,000 in 1910 is the equivalent of $4 million today. $4,039,000 today, right? So he said, "Fine, I'll do the fight. I'll go fight if you want me to. Fine, right?" And so Jeffries is excited to get in the fight because Jeffries literally says, "I'm going into the fight for the sake of proving that the white man is better than the Negro." Right? And he said, "I'm also going into this race because my intent is to win the title back for the white race." Right? So it's already political and racially motivated. They get into this fight. It's a good fight too. It goes 15 rounds. 15th round, Jeffries is knocked out cold. Jack Johnson handles that best. Done. Out of here. Boom. Goodbye. What do you think happened next? Since sports is not political. White rage. Within 2 days, 10 people had been killed in 6 different cities, right? Or 6 different states. And there were riots in all of these different places. In DC alone, there were 236 arrests from rioting. And then there were different race riots in places like, and when I say race, I stick with race massacre. I like saying that. These were all in response to Black people celebrating. Because, this is when people paraded in the streets. White folks didn't like that crap. So there were racial attacks in Atlanta, in Cincinnati, in Houston, in New York, in St. Louis. And there were also multiple attacks in the state of West Virginia, in Illinois, in Maryland, in Ohio, in Missouri, in Louisiana, in Nebraska, and in Pennsylvania, right? When you go to, I think it's called Uvalde, Georgia, you had white men open fire on a group of people who were celebrating. And then when you talk about Norfolk, Virginia, you had a mob of 300 white men go out looking for Black folks that were celebrating just because they wanted somebody to suffer. So again, this is all political. So I don't know what RG3 was talking about. He can say the Kumbaya, we are the world speech. We're past that. That symbolic post-racial ideology that people keep trying to run with like it's still 1996. Educate yourselves and step up to what the reality is. You're literally watching everything in real time, and folks are still choosing to be obtuse because they're afraid of making people uncomfortable with conversations around race. Just shut up, right? Like I said, this era of what I call the white renaissance is a whole lot bigger than sports. And it's one of the reasons why they're doing everything to pull us out of the history books. It's one of the reasons why, again, they are trying to rewrite history. Because again, in my personal opinion, white folks have an inferiority complex, and it pisses them off when they see other groups of people doing well, even when they don't have anything. Just the fact that Black people, even though we have the issues we have economically and systemically, the fact that for all of the cities and establishments that we built that they burned down and destroyed, and for every time that we had a piece of something and they took it away and we keep bouncing back every single time, that's messing them up in the head. They're like, what the hell? What are they not tired? So now we're getting the most extreme version of this inferiority complex with all these executive orders, right? I just saw Orange Man talking about we're gonna start putting Columbus back in the history books and just anything that they can throw at the wall to make stick. That's where we're at. And so understand, for people like RG3 and everybody else who thinks that sports is not political, it is. I'm gonna pause this conversation because I want to get to Sanders, but I want to read some comments first to get to the second half of this, and then we're gonna go from there. This tea is really hitting. They did this one. Okay. Let's see where we're at here. Nancy said, in preserving our history, but often journalists and other professions get more recognition than the historians themselves, which is unfortunate. Yeah, that goes back to the comment that they made about getting behind different people that are in academia, like professors and historians and archivists that lock things in, right? Somebody said, we're minding our business, taking care of our own. Y'all got it. And even when we mind our business, people will still find their way up in it. They can't stand to see us having a good time. Ayana J said, that white protester lady had the wisdom extractor's voice. If you follow my podcast, you know what I'm talking about. I do need to get that next episode out. I'm sorry, by the way. That was supposed to come out 2 weeks ago, but the New Jack Swing doc took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to take. Poison Ivy said, listen, I used to be up for a good march or riot. I used to keep masks and signs in the trunk. I think my last one was for Mike Brown. My mother forbade me to demonstrate for Freddie Gray. I just with the marches, I just started seeing stuff I didn't really like, so I kind of pulled back. But they're still needed. It's just, yeah, I think everybody serves their different role. I figured I had more impact being right here and just educating versus getting beat up in the street. And now I really want people to be careful, because now that we have qualified immunity like nationwide for police and everything like that, I want folks to really be careful, because the police really have permission to do whatever they want now. So please be careful for those who choose to go out there. But like I said, the demographic that got us in this, the burden is on them, right? Because how many times do we have to keep saving this country just to get slapped in the face by it and the people who aren't even appreciative, right? Let's see. The order of bees. I remember this case. The fact they arrested a black woman for trying to get their children to different zip codes tells you just how segregated society was, and how it still is. You know, even with the research, the most segregated school district in the country is in New York City, right? Which is wild to me. Like a lot of the places that you would never expect, like New York. Please go back and listen to the podcast "Nice White Ladies." I think it's what, or Good White. What is? Hold on. I think it's called "Nice White Ladies." Nice White Parents. Excellent podcast that jumps into just the conversation of what has happened with public schooling, especially in the world when it's kind of saturated in the space of charter schools and magnet schools and private schools and people who have money to throw this and not money for that. Please go back and listen to that podcast. It does such a great job. And it's about 5 or 6 episodes. But I mean, y'all know I love the conversation of cause and effect. Yeah, I love the conversation of cause and effect, and that podcast runs straight through it, where you see these parents who come in there with an initiative where they wanted to bring a program to a certain school that was in the inner city that was majority Black and Latino, and then that program started to get a whole bunch of money because some really wealthy parents and stuff started donating to it, and then they recruited, and then as they recruited, here come a bunch of white kids, because it was a program for like teaching French, and so before you know it, it starts becoming this program where they recruit kids that are not even from the area to come in there. It's a bunch of wealthy kids. And then the school ends up kind of like separating into 2 separate institutions in the same building, where all the money is going to the people in the French program, but the actual school is getting nothing. And I mean, they were bringing in millions of dollars, right? And this is not any kind of fancy school. Please go listen. Such a great listen. But you get to see the cause and effect. And then what ended up happening, the parent that was so passionate about making sure that French was available to everybody, as soon as their kid graduated and was out of school, they were like, the hell with this whole program, I'm out. And yeah, and then the school ended up being left off worse than before. So please go listen to that. It's on Spotify. Somebody said we're not in a post-racial society. Yes, exactly. Let's see. Red Summer 1919. That a whole bunch of riots that year. Whole bunch. Okay. Anyway, so let's get to the second half, right? So now you have Shedeur Sanders. I was about to say Samson. Now, if you know where I stand, I'm not big on the NFL. NFL already told us where they stand with us years ago with the Colin Kaepernick stuff, right? They told us where they stood with us. I thought we was boycotting. Once Jay-Z got his deal and they started getting them halftime performance, everybody kind of just stopped boycotting, and the boycott was kind of just done. And it is what it is. I get it. Entertainment is entertainment. And then Colin Kaepernick got his own opportunities and stuff. I get it. But for me, after they showed us where we stood, I just have never really quite looked at them the same. So I don't really follow the NFL anymore. Like if you used to follow me, the Seahawks was my favorite team. I could name all the players, and I haven't followed the season since 2015. In 2015, that was when Russell Wilson was still on the Seahawks, and you said Marshawn Lynch and Richard Sherman and all of them. I can't tell you who's on what anymore. But I have been paying attention to this NFL draft story. And so you have Deion Sanders' son. He's now actually been drafted. I think he was the 144 pick, and he got drafted to the Cleveland Browns. But what we do know is, if you're just looking at his stats, right? So his single season record, he had 4,134 passing yards. He had 353 completions. He had 37 passing touchdowns, and he had a pass completion rate of 74%, meaning 3 out of 4 times when you throw the ball to him, he's going to be able to catch it, or vice versa, or whatever he does, right? And so the skill and the talent is there. However, there were many who felt he was just too cocky. They felt big ego, rich kid, parents are rich. He's not grateful enough. He's not humble enough. He doesn't know how to play the game right. There was literally an NFL exec who said that Shedeur made you feel small, or made him feel small. Remember that inferiority complex I was talking about? Whole NFL exec, multi-millionaire, probably worth $300 or $400 million. Somehow this college student is making them feel small. This goes back to what I said again, where that inferiority complex, not only do they want to own everything, they want to own the talent, they want to own all aspects of it. And so they recognize they don't have that aspect. They can't do the things that some of these athletes do. They can just buy their way through things. But even having all the money in the world is still not enough, because they got to have everything. They want the talent. But since they can't have it, they got to find a way to somehow still take control of even that conversation. And so you have that aspect. And then you also have the other bit where, again, his father is Deion Sanders. Y'all know Deion used to shake the table back in the day, especially since he was playing multiple sports. And so, they really, really don't like that. Can't stand it. And so, to me, from the outside looking in, it looked like the NFL was trying to teach him a lesson, trying to get him to be humble, right? Because again, when you're Black and talented, they always want us to express extreme gratitude to them. They want us to always be super humble and have humility. And listen, I'm somebody who's all about humility to begin with. But in this context, here's my thing. For athletes, especially athletes in sports like a hockey or football, where you're really putting your body on the line, if I'm putting my body on the line to the point where by the time I get out of this field, I'm probably going to have CTE, probably can't think straight. I'm probably going to have all these kind of health problems. And we saw exactly how the NFL treated retired NFL players who had sued with regard to a lot of the injuries and the stuff that they sustained over time, and especially with regard to CTE in that little tiny baby settlement that they got. And we also saw what happened with the NFL when it came to distributing that settlement, how they had the research talking about how the Black athletes had just a special genetics that made them more adaptable to injury and so on and so forth. So they didn't need as much, aftercare, because they would be fine. Like we saw all the racist things the NFL did, right? So here's my thing. If I'm a talented player, I don't have to kiss your behind, because at the end of the day, you need me, right? You can sit here and try to punk me out during the draft session, but it's me putting my body on the line. It's me having to be away from home, however many months out of the year. It's me having to train in the cold, in the rain, go to all these different places, and literally run headfirst into somebody else, for however many games are in the season, for how many hours on a Sunday, a Monday, a Thursday, or I don't think they got Saturday football, Monday, Thursday, Sunday, those are the days, right? It's me that I have to do that all the time. And so at that point, the humility that I show is in what I brought to the team. It's in the skills that I had. It's in the fact that because I listened to whatever coaches, or I was able to help put the team on the map, there's the humility. I shouldn't have to kiss your behind. You shouldn't be pissed off because I love myself. Now, I get it. Some folks are like, nope, no, y'all don't get it, so on and so forth. But then I'm like, y'all didn't even do that to Archie Manning. Like, because folks kept saying, no, it's about Deion Sanders. Deion's going to get on their nerves. He's been getting on everybody's nerves in Colorado. But I'm like, Archie Manning, I don't remember these conversations. And when Eli was like, if y'all draft me to the Chargers, I'm not playing for them, I don't remember these conversations about humility. And look, Eli got what he wanted. They put him on the Giants, right? And so it's just interesting. Again, when it comes to us, we're not afforded those same privileges. They want us to beg and crawl and thank them for everything. And for me, I just think, again, I don't want to hear a conversation about humility when it's an athlete. I think athletes, one, they already got enough going on. And the other thing, too, it's not like the NFL is the most upstanding organization when it comes to players. They got enough players that's over here beating their girlfriends upside the head and doing everything under the sun and got all kind of issues. So we're not going to sit here and act like the NFL is this prestigious organization of regality and poise and tranquility and everyone. Please, like, no, I don't want to hear it. So you see the double standard. And even with the prank, right, you have Jeff Ubrick's son somehow get this number and prank him, which I was like, see, again, right? Because they recognize you're literally at this point holding the vulnerability of somebody in your hands. And so that element of power that you feel, where you can somehow get a number that was a private number, as far as, what was given out to the players, that phone number where they called Sanders' son, that was coming from a line that only the NFL had. So clearly somebody on the inside, I don't even know how that player from the Falcons got the number, but whatever. But the fact that for them it was a joke is funny. So we watched him go through day one, not get drafted. Now, before all this took place, he was expected to be probably the 5th or 6th draft pick, right? So we watched day one happen. He ain't got in. Okay, cool. We watched day 2 happen. He still ain't got in. At this point, there are people who have better stats than him getting in, right? We get to day 3, and that's where the prank comes in. And so for a lot of folks, you know, this is kind of a joke to them because they enjoy. And I think we need to also understand that the Sanders family represents new money and also that conversation of generational wealth. So they already pissed Deion Sanders got what he got, right? And now you also mean to tell them that his son is possibly going to be able to contribute to that as well and continue that legacy even more, or they're going to find every way to kind of manage and control that. And like I said, I don't really follow football like that. I don't care if he was the most arrogant, loudmouth player out there. There's a whole bunch of arrogant, loudmouth players that y'all give these multi-million-dollar contracts to and y'all put up with all the time. So I don't want to hear it. You have, again, who's that Seahawk that beat that black girl down so bad to the point where she had to get reconstructive surgery on her face, right? I don't hear any conversation about let's yank this person out the NFL. I'm not hearing these conversations with these NFL players that, again, continue to beat on their spouses or beat on their women or don't pay for the children that they keep having off to the side and the kids out here broke. And none of that, which I want to give all the smoke to a college student that loves himself. Cut the crap. Again, it's an inferiority complex. That's really what it is. And that's really all I got for it. Like, I just was like, yeah, we've seen how this plays. But again, it's a conversation of trying to break him down and make him humble. They wanted that boy to crawl and beg. But anyway, he's got sent to the Cleveland Browns. Now, I will say for him, where this works in his favor, since he's a 3rd round draft pick, or maybe 4th round, there's no burden on him. He can just go in the game and do whatever. Versus had he been one of those 5th or 6th picks right away, they would have wanted him to park the Red Sea. So now he has a little bit of leverage at agency, even I think we'll see how he does. But again, it's always been that thing. They've done that with our athletes all the time. They did that with the NBA players when they started giving them that dress code. We don't like how y'all looking representing us. And I just feel like at the end of the day, I don't care who owns the team. I don't care who has the big money, who's writing the checks, unless they're the ones putting their bodies on the line and they're the ones actually on the court or on the field or in the pool or in the baseball diamond. You don't get to try to manage the agency over these athletes. That's one of the reasons why I was so over the NFL after the Kaepernick thing, because it was like they were pissed about the whole thing with the troops, which clearly is BS because we see how America's moving with the troops now. All these guts and stuff to the Department of Defense, I ain't hearing nothing. The person who has been reelected after a 3rd election, right, told you that all the people who came back from war broke up with missing legs and were a bunch of losers and suckers, put them right back in office. But going back, I just think back to when this whole hoopla was about the knee and disrespect to the troops. Okay, fine. Players were like, well, we'll just stay in the locker room until after the national anthem, and then we'll, come out. And Jerry Jones, y'all know that's my favorite person to drag. He said, no players of mine are going to be in no locker room during the national anthem. They're going to be out there toes to the line. It's one of the reasons why I appreciate athletes, but I don't really hold them to a super high regard sometimes because I'm like, man, y'all don't even realize the power y'all have. Like if every athlete was like, man, so much could change in sporting. Even with the college athletes, when I think of the nonsense that they have and have to deal with, even though finally they're able to get some element of compensation. But when you think of the decades of what you call intellectual property that was used with their image, where we're talking, let's go back to the 90s, right? All them Sega games, EA Sports and all that stuff, and stuff on Nintendo 64 and all those games. And as we graduated to PlayStation and PlayStation 2 and Xbox and Dreamcast and all these different gaming systems, and millions, well, probably actually billions were made from the likeness and the imaging of these college athletes who got nothing. And mind you, these athletes were not allowed to take anything. LeBron produced a documentary some years back that we covered on one of the In the News episodes. I'm trying to bring In the News back, by the way, as well, too. But there was a situation where you had one athlete who was a walk-on. They got into their university. They came in as a walk-on. And so because they were a walk-on for football, they didn't qualify for housing. They didn't qualify for the scholarships. And so there was a family that was nice enough to let that student stay with them, while they got on their feet. The school found out and said, oh, no, that's you taking a gift. And so then they were kicked out of the program and kicked out of the school. And because of that, and this was a violation of the NCAA, they weren't allowed to play at any other NCAA institution. And they ended up having to finish doing, I think, arena football, making $30,000 a year. Their entire NFL dream was shut down over some technicalities. And so when I just see what it is that these athletes deal with, I'm like, yeah, it's that inferiority complex. Everybody thinks they own us, and they're going to find every way to dictate what it is that we do, how we move, and how we do it, right? All right, let me pause and read some comments here. Let's see. Somebody said, what's the podcast called? It's called Comedically Hard-Headed. Some of the episodes are on this channel. You can just go to my playlist and there's the Comedically Hard-Headed episodes there. But the most recent episodes are on all the streaming services like Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. I think I'm going to pull the podcast from SoundCloud because I'm tired of paying $15 a month. And SoundCloud, nobody's really on it like that anyway. I'm just wasting money. But I know there's a user, Cartoon Lover, that listens on there. So I've been thinking of them as I make those podcasts. But yeah, let's see here. Speaking of RG3, one more thing, and in that same way where we say sports is not political, the other thing too is like, I don't feel like a lot of these sports leagues really have the best interest in the athlete anyway, because really RG3's whole career got screwed up because he came back too early. Remember, he actually had a booming career and then he got injured. And then they rushed him back, right? Rushed him back, got jacked up again, and now he never really quite recovered, and that was the end of his career, right? He kind of just has bounced around, but he never was able to reach that full potential. And it just goes to show, like, all that is political. They're thinking of their bottom line. It's like, look, we know you injured, but you need to come back. We need to win, especially when, he was on the Commanders at the time of the injury, and they had a few rough seasons. So they were happy he got there. So no, you better get out on that field. We saw how that worked out. Right. Let's see. Somebody said no amount of money makes up for destroying someone physically. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I think that's one of the reasons I was never in sports as far as me being an athlete. The only sport I was decent at was track. I had a scholarship for that. I didn't go though, because I ended up going to Howard instead. And actually I was really good at soccer, but I never had like the sports dream as a child. Like, oh, I'm going to be this, to be that. But for those who have that dream of being a football player, like, I think in the back of their mind, they have to also accept that even though you're going to make all this money, you're going to do this sport that you love, when it's all said and done, when that career is over, and as you get older, you're going to have all these other health problems. And the NFL hasn't really done a great job of trying to combat some of that because money talks. So yeah, it's like you sign up for it, but you better be jacked up long term. Thank you, Eugenia Gomes. Dro Mario said Minnesota could have got him instead of trying to get Green Bay's leftovers again. Somebody said the correlation between the football league and the plantation system is eerie and undeniable. It goes back to that book. It's a 40 million, either it's $20 million slaves or $40 million slaves. Please read that book. I mean, it literally explains all of that. Yeah, thank you, Isaiah Videos. Somebody said, I just heard there's chaos currently in the Pentagon because of Tangerine. Oh, well, oh boy, they're trying to get up out of there, because I didn't get to talk about the people sending all the information on the text messages and all that. But again, that's why it's so funny hearing these DEI conversations and conversations around merit and who's qualified. And you're watching the most unqualified cabinet known to man just mess up everything. Mess it all up, all in the name of whiteness. They don't even really have a plan of how they're doing anything. A lot of this is just the only thing that they all agree on, and I'm talking about Orange Man, his cabinet, people that have been nominated and put it. The only thing they all agree on is that they're mad. They don't even know how to organize any of this. Remember when I said, like, even with January 6th, had January 6th been successful, well, technically I feel like it is at this point. It just took a few years. But in that day when it happened, their goal was, we're going to take over the government. I'm like, y'all didn't even have a plan to how this was going to go. Y'all didn't have none of this mapped out. Y'all just knew y'all was going to storm up in there and tear some stuff up. And none of the other stuff was really thought of. And we're kind of living through that now. Even with all the cuts and doles and all that crap, they didn't think a lot of this out. They just showed up and just started doing stuff. Now stuff is backfiring. They got to undo stuff, undo this. Orange Man and these tariffs, he throw something out there and then you got to take it back. And he shake the table some more and then you got to take it back. And, well, we met with China. And China's like, they ain't meet with us. Foolery. Just a bunch of stupid. Everybody just stupid. I'm not enjoying this, but I'm enjoying this at the same time. Because white folks, the mirror is on y'all. Y'all get to see how y'all really look to the rest of the world for a change. Right? You always want to paint us to be the ones that are unqualified with everything. We are watching y'all, the best of the best y'all got to offer in real time. In real time. Nothing funnier than watching Marco Rubio have to literally live as the contradiction of everything he claimed he once stood for just 10 years ago. Nothing like watching that. Nothing like watching Marco Rubio try to justify that 4-year-old with the cancer getting deported. And he's trying to say, well, the child could have gone with the father. I'm like, y'all. Marco Rubio got to work extra hard because, he could be on the chopping block too because he Cuban himself, right? Keep playing, they deport you too. All right. My God, make it make sense. Oh, I'm sorry. Say not my podcast. Well, excuse me. What's the podcast about the public schools infiltrated? It's called Nice White Parents. That's the podcast. Let's see. Somebody said my parents pushed my brother to do football, and the more I learn about it, the more I wish they hadn't. We already have genetic back problems. I played football for 2 years, but it was cool. I wasn't that pressed about it. I wasn't that good either, so it didn't matter. But yeah, I did it for 1 year of junior high and 1 year of high school. But I stopped growing. Until I got to like my senior, maybe my junior year, I was like 5'3" in ninth grade. 5'3", maybe 100 pounds, 110 pounds. And all my friends had grown. I was tired. I was like, I ain't about to, I was a corner and a safety. And I'm like, and I'm supposed to be stopping who at 110 pounds? And this kid is 6'3". And I'm 5'3". Okay, all right. This ain't gonna be like no Bugsby in the NBA. We're gonna have to let that one go. So I knew how to accept to know my strengths and accept my weaknesses. That wasn't my gift, so I let it go. All right. Let's see where we're at here. Okay, I want to touch on this. I think I'm gonna come back to this in a different live because I haven't really had a chance to really follow this story because my plate's been a little full, but I still want to talk about this. This is with Karmelo Anthony, right? Now, this is the kid out of Texas where he ends up in the altercation with the white kid, and the white kid gets stabbed in the chest, and the white kid dies. And now we're having these very interesting dialogues. I'm just going to say this. It's interesting to see how America moves in these moments because people are mad that there are those who are choosing to support Karmelo Anthony's defense fund. And there are people who are frustrated because they think Karmelo Anthony's being given too much grace. And I'm like, but when Kyle Rittenhouse went across state lines with his AR-15s to Kenosha in a state he didn't live in, drove 2 hours because he was so worried about the businesses out there and went out there looking for trouble, found the trouble he wanted to get into, and then killed 2 people. They wanted to paint him to be a hero. They raised all kinds of money. White folks were out in droves talking about he was protecting this and protecting that because he went with the intent to start something. He literally packed up the weapon, got in the car, and drove, right? Went with the intent, looking for a fight. Gets out there, kills 2 people, kills his own at that, kills some white folks, right? And then he's painted to be a hero. They raise all this money. We go to the trial court case and everything. He does the fake tears. And remember, I was so scared. Scared of some skinny liberals with some protest signs. I'm so scared. And he was working hard to force this one tear that couldn't even go all the way down. It stopped right here. Didn't even make it down the face because there wasn't enough moisture in the tear, right? He gets off. They parade him around. He makes millions. And WWE and pyrotech. He's walking out. And they want this man to be a hero so bad, right? George Zimmerman told him to mind his business, right? After it's been reported he was a little cuckoo and kept calling 911 on people anyway, told him to mind his business, walks up and approaches a random kid trying to get this kid to identify himself when the kid does not have to do that to begin with. Somehow, apparently, allegedly gets in a fight, loses the fight because he wasn't in the best shape to be fighting to begin with. You walk up on a kid that's 6 feet tall, you're going to get laid out. Get laid out. Now you claim you fear for your life. Oh, he was banging my head in the concrete. Then we see the picture, and it's this tiny little gash with little 3-4 drops of blood, but somehow Trayvon was just allegedly, right? According to Zimmerman. And Zimmerman was a hero. All kinds of money being raised. Jamie Foxx was cussed out for wearing a Trayvon Martin t-shirt at the VMAs. Even Donald Trump jumped in on this one. And when the verdict came out and Zimmerman got off, the jury had no other choice, right? Thank God, right? All kind of nonsense. And so it's just interesting because that was a stand your ground state. And Texas is a stand your ground state as well. And so now we have somebody who's exercising their stand your ground rights, right? In a situation where this whole thing apparently started because he was under the wrong tent. And then here comes the person who's no longer living. I forgot his name. Austin Metcalf comes in and says, oh, you can't sit here, blah, 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 blah. Something happens. He ain't here no more. Now, from what I've read, and please do not quote me because I need to go back and actually verify some of this. There had already been some run-ins with Karmelo and this student a few times, and that they actually beat this kid up a few times from what I've read, and a few other things, and so on and so forth. And so when you're actually looking at Karmelo's background, I'm like, something doesn't quite add up with the story as far as, you know, them trying to paint him to be the aggressor, which is very, very interesting, right? They want him to be the aggressor so bad. And it's gotten so bad, you know, the family has had to relocate. Even the judge that reduced the bond, because his bond was initially $1 million, but because he had no other priors, this is like an honor roll student. You know, at one point he saved somebody from drowning. There hasn't been a whole lot of things. There's nothing on him. The judge is like, no, he's not even a flight risk, so we'll drop it down to $250K. They even doxed the judge, right? Crazy out here. And so it's just wild to me, because then people wanted to police the money that was being raised for his defense fund, and everybody was trying to pay attention to what the family was spending. And, you know, and then it's always funny because you see that same cycle. So just like with Trayvon, when everything happened with Trayvon Martin, the first thing that they did, found pictures of some other kid that wasn't even Trayvon, because he's just holding up some signs and got some gold grill, because they love to paint out the extremities. Anytime we show up or end up in some situation, whether we are on the receiving end as a victim or whether we're the alleged aggressor, they bring out the ultimate set of extremities right away. There's never a conversation about due process or let's wait for the facts. Not without, nope, automatically guilty. So just like with Trayvon, when they were trying to find everything that they could find, and oh, he had a little THC in his system, because I'm like, yeah, marijuana really makes you aggressive these days, right? Even though everybody's getting rich now because it's legal in so many different places and everybody got dispensaries, while the folks who initially got locked up years ago are still, you know, recovering from whatever nonsense they had to deal with from the judicial system in the prison industrial complex, while everybody else gets to be rich, right? But no, they paint him to be all kind of violent and this, that, and the third. And, you know, they find out what he went to space camp. Oh, that must have been some kind of scam and blah, blah, blah. They dig into the father's background. They dig into Sabrina, the mama's background. They want to know what the cousin did. Put everything out there that they can find. They're doing the same thing with Karmelo Anthony as well. Now they want to dig deep and paint him to be a criminal, to the point where they started posting a video of a totally different kid from a different state in California that was 13 that got in a fight at a basketball game. And they tried to say, this was him the day before stumping somebody out in the gym. And I'm like, basketball season and track season aren't even at the same. What are y'all talking about? Make it make sense. We're going to see how this one unfolds. But I think it will be a very, very interesting case because, yeah, it goes into that conversation of stand your ground and self-defense. And really the case is going to kind of rely on, was the amount of defense, you know, equitable enough to the offense that took place. But I will say that was also the argument that initially was made with the Zimmerman case, and Zimmerman got off. Now, I want to see if this same thing happens with Karmelo. I definitely want to go back and read up a bit more on this case. And there's some other channels that have done a way better job than I have on this story. But something to me, I just feel like it was a self-defense thing. Because first of all, why go out? How do I say this? I'm tired of folks going out of their way to start stuff. And then when something goes down, everybody wants to have the woe is me parade and bring out the sympathy, this, that, and third, and then throw the hammer at whatever. Like, based on what we've read so far and what we've seen, Karmelo Anthony's never bothered anybody, right? And so now here we go. We got these two twins. And it's interesting to see how the victim's father has been responding and hasn't really said a whole lot against Karmelo Anthony's family. So I feel like, yeah, you kind of probably know something about this kid. I'm not trying to whack the kid because he's already out of here. But, you know, it will be interesting to see how this goes. But again, you see the way race works in this country. We're automatically guilty. No, day one, no matter what happened. The way they have jumped through hoops and hurdles for Kyle Rittenhouse and George Zimmerman. And even Daniel Perry, who now I believe he just landed a really new, nice, fancy job. That's the guy who killed the guy on the subway. You know, he couldn't mind his business. They always starting some stuff, right? Everybody want to be a hero so bad, right? All right, let's read some comments here. You just gotta know when, like, you just know your lanes, people. Somebody said, give a little leg and take it right back. Give a little shoulder, take it right back. I remember that from that Cosby episode. Let's see. What do I think of the student loan garnishment of wages? Well, there were options where we could have had it a little bit better had the election turned out a little differently. But yeah, I think what's really jacked up with this system, and I want to say this to people who always keep whacking the people who have a lot of student debt. Um, I think people need to think back, especially if you went to college after 1985-ish onward. Think about when you got to campus on that first day. One of the first things you probably saw was a table with one of the banks, right? Where they wanted you to sign up for a credit card. And even when it came to getting some of the loans, if you weren't able to get a loan from, the Parent Plus program or whatever else, you had to get a private one. Some of these loans were so predatory and had such horrible like APRs and everything. But at that point in time, the promise of prosperity through education was painted for people to be like, yeah, you'll take this debt, but it's going to pay off because you're going to land these really great jobs and so on and so forth. And we just fast forward. And a lot of people, because of their credit history and different other things, because again, these are 17 and 18-year-olds making lifelong decisions, right? A lot of times they get these loans that just totally suck. And even when you pay the minimum, the interest is so high that you never, pay it off. So what ends up happening is there's so many people who've been paying the minimum on their loans because honestly, that's all they can afford. They went into a field that does not pay the compensation to kind of counterbalance whatever's happening. In addition to the fact that when we compare life from 30 years ago to now, cost of housing has skyrocketed. Average cost of a house right now is about $440,000 compared to, you go back 30 plus years, we were down into the $120,000 range, right? Cost of living is skyrocketing, right? Cost of inflation has skyrocketed. Inflation has skyrocketed 644% since 1979. Actually, I take that back. Sorry, that's productivity has increased 644% since 1979, but the wages have not matched up, right? And so productivity has now outpaced compensation. So you have that thing to consider. The cost of childcare has skyrocketed, right? When we take into account literally everything that we do, everything it's wild out here. So even though people are going to school and they're getting these degrees, it's not the same. It's just not the same field that people are being dropped off in right now versus 30, 40, 50 years ago. And then again, so you have all these people who have made that commitment to pay these loans back. But again, the interest is so high that when they pay the minimum, they can't counterbalance the interest, or they don't make enough to counterbalance the interest or have enough to kind of at least balance off the interest. And then if you balance off the interest, you're still here. You still got to go above that in order to start paying down the debt, which is why there's some people who may have taken out a $40,000 loan in 2000 and now it's $43,000 or so on and so forth. And then stuff compounds. And you have people who defer because they go back to school or whatever field they're in requires them to go and get additional education. And it just keeps adding up and adding up. And so what's happening right now with this current administration, I think it's a very vile approach when you're talking about going and garnishing people's wages. They're already not paying the loans because they ain't got it. Now you want to take some more, right? And this is, again, privatizing and making folks super wealthy, again, making their friends super rich and everything. And it's just like, it's so many weird things. It's even like with him bragging about the idea of the one-time payment of $5,000 to new parents. And I'm like, well, you know what, had y'all voted the other way, there would have been a $6,000 credit per child every tax year for the first however many years for a child. And I just want to say, even that with the $5,000 is cute, but no. And I'm gonna tell you why. Mainly because when we're talking about just the cost of raising a child, let's go to that $5,000 he's talking about, right? $5,000 per child. Honestly, it's not even a hospital bill. That's not even the bill from if you call the ambulance and go and say you get a cesarean section. You already burned through that $5,000 and the baby ain't even here yet. They still cutting the baby out, right? And so I think back to my coworker from the podcast, Ava. I remember, and I told the story a few times, but when she was pregnant with her first child, she had asked me, she was like, hey, if I happen to go into labor at work, this is when I still work with the kids at the community center. She was like, if I happen to go into labor at work, can you be the person to take me to the hospital? Because I always thought we just gonna call the ambulance. She was like, we don't got that kind of money. And really, we didn't working where we worked. So I was like, okay. And I just always remember being stressed out because the baby's due date was the same day as the Janet Jackson concert. And I was, I had already missed. Janet had just canceled her tour 2 years earlier because she was having a baby and everything. So I bought a ticket in May of 2015 and had held on to it. And it's now November of 2017, I'm like, I'm gonna get to this show. And I remember praying, like, please don't go into labor on November 14th. Please don't, because I can't miss this show. Right. Fortunately, she had the baby a few days early, so I got to go to the show. But again, like, that's just the hospital bills, right? The average parent spends about $16,000 in the first year on a newborn, right? Because you have all those different things. And now with the changes in this administration, it's not federally mandated to have paid family leave. And they also have states working against that as far as getting rid of the places that do have it, trying to not really regulate or make it something that's universal for everybody. So there's no paid family leave, right? There's not really subsidized childcare. They've gutted and cut back on things like Head Start and a lot of the programs that once existed. We already have a super high child mortality rate in this country, unfortunately. And then healthcare is the nonsense that it is. And so it's kind of like, where's that 5,000 going? Like, that's just going back to the hospital. That's making them rich. But as far as the actual people, 5,000 is nothing to do a hoopla about. That's why I was like, y'all can try to paint this as something great, but it's really not, especially when you're going to give the 5K, but at the same time, you stripped everything else away. So the 5K just gets absorbed into the other services that you've already cut. Like, stupid. I ain't mean to get on my soapbox, but it pissed me off. All right. Somebody said, meanwhile, Willie Nelson has been high as hell for decades. Exactly. When it came to the conversation about weed, they wanted to paint marijuana to be so violent when it's us. But, they celebrate Willie Nelson smoking weed on the rooftop of the White House. They love that. Yeah, that's, man. And then don't get talking about Woodstock and the flower power movement. And yeah, it was just a day of love, man. It was just a day of love. And you see one of us with something, we all kind of criminals and everything. We everything, right? We about to be serial killers. Crazy. Make it make sense. Nothing makes sense around these days. Lil I3D, thank you for that. And then after taxes, that's only going to be about $2,500, right? And it kind of sucks because there's a lot of people who want kids and can't afford them. I'm like, hell, I want some kids soon too, but I'm like, damn, I'm gonna be broke as hell trying to raise kids. And I'm getting older too. I'm thinking about being this age and having to step on Legos and stuff. But yeah, it's expensive out here. Right, I can barely afford myself. You saw how long I held on to that Macbook. There's a reason I kept that thing for 10 years because this Macbook I just got, I ain't gonna tell you how much I paid for it, but thank God they got a payment plan. I was like, oh yeah, sign me up because I don't want to drop that kind of money today. Right. All right, let's see what else we got here. Somebody said they just announced the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. People being inducted, and it's clear they snubbed them around. Oh, let me see who they got. I mean, let's see. Rock and Roll. I remember how they'd be pissed when we get in that thing. Okay, let's see who they nominated real quick. Thank you for bringing that up. Give me the list. Okay. The newest entrants announced during the live broadcast are Bad Company, Chubby Checker, Joe Cocker, Cyndi Lauper, Outkast, Soundgarden, and the White Stripes. That's it. They normally have a few more. Is that it? Okay. All right. Okay. Cool. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Somebody said, at least the judge is making sense. Remember how Amber Geiger's judge gave her, oh God, we did. Oh, that was that live. What I think I entitled that live the Forgiveness Olympics. I remember that. Y'all know I was pissed about that. That's the Botham Jean case where, Amber went into the wrong apartment and swore it was hers. And she saw Botham sitting there eating ice cream and then shot and killed him. And then she got 10 years. And that the judge gave her the Bible. The bailiff was brushing her hair back. Then the brother wanted to give her a hug. I said, what is going on here? Okay, people. Lord. Now, I will say, as far as the Karmelo Anthony case, I do hope we can get into a space where not even just our youth, but people in general have a way to handle disputes where it doesn't have to get to that. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, a lot of times when we are moving in the moment, the long-term thoughts are not there. And I don't know the full background of the Austin kid, but again, you now have somebody who's no longer living, right? And so I just society has just gotten to a space where I think because of the extremities that exist and because things have become so divided, people have just become a lot more I don't even know what the word I want to use. It's just a weird time because I just wonder how did it even get to that point, right? And so I'm just hoping people start looking a little bit more long term because I it sucks that you kind of your future gets thrown away because of actions, and I get it. It's self defense and that's happening, but it's like, man, and you know what country we live in. This is not the place to kind of get caught up in that kind of stuff. But thank you, Jay Way Spills. I feel like things are just less humane in the moment. And I've said this even when it comes to just fighting, especially with the emergence of social media and smartphones and stuff. I personally feel like even when like the teenagers be out there wrecking and stuff, it's different from when I was a teenager. Because one, when I was a teenager, first of all, the iPhone came out after high school for me. It came out when I was in college. And so when I was in high school, people didn't record fights because nobody had phones that could record video. You might have had the latest Nokia and it could take pictures and it was going to be real pixelated. And every now and then somebody might have had a real video camera that you had to put a tape in. And so fights to me, you know, people fought and you fight whoever and that's into that. Something about people being on camera, and this is unrelated to Karmelo Anthony at this point. I'm just talking about in general. I'm convinced that it's something about people being consciously aware that they're on video and that there's a likeliness that this video is going to be put online and possibly go viral, that it makes people just step it up as far as the aggression with whatever fight. Because they're like, I don't want to get my, you know what, beat in front of the world. So I got to go extra hard. And that's just what I've always gotten, right? Because going back to when I was in high school, because now like with this generation, if there's a fight, and what's crazy, there was a kid that just got stabbed at the high school that my kids went to on Wednesday or Thursday of this past week. Just wow, there was a fight and then the kid got stabbed. I'm like, Lord, geez, I had to text like, hey, who got stabbed? Is it one of us? But yeah, and so it's like when I was in high school, you know, if there was a fight or something in the hallway, if you missed it, that was it. You just missed it. You had to just get it at the lunch table from somebody, you know. And so if you were that person that witnessed it, you were the news reporter that day, and you told everybody, yeah, man, she did this, she jumped down the stairs, she was like, whack, 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 y'all missed it, and that was it. But today, because everybody records everything, you know, a fight not only is seen by your peers or your classmates, but it's seen by everybody on the internet if it spreads. There are little people who are virally known for getting beat up. Sharkeisha, right? That was one of my most viewed videos before I took it down. You know, well known, or the girl Jade, if you remember that was the girl that was bullying the girl in the locker room, and then that girl laid her out a few times. Like, people are literally known for getting beat up in this modern day and time. So it's an interesting space we're in. But I really hope I need people to heal. I need us to heal, man. Everybody has all this built up rage and anger, and everybody's constantly looking for something to jump into all the time. Just all right. Anyway, Melody said a lot of times these schools ignore harassment and bullying from certain kids. I totally agree, because I told that story. Let me read your comment first. They want a kid to defend themselves. They want to give punishment all of a sudden. I told you that I had a kid who was named after a very, very popular celebrity, but it was a very unorthodox name. This is a black girl I had, and she was a 9th grader at the high school. Now, this specific high school was actually a pretty wealthy high school because of where it was located. However, there were pockets in the area where there were families that were not super, super rich. And she was one of those families that came from a working class environment where it's like, I want to say 5 siblings, and I know the mama's information because I ran the center and stuff, but I think that family made under 40K a year, right? So you have that aspect where you're going to school with a bunch of rich kids, but you don't have what they have. Then too, you have a very, 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 very popular name, but very unorthodox, which kind of makes you a target for people to mock and make fun of. And then on top of that, and then she was a darker skinned girl, so she had to kind of deal with some of that nonsense. But anyway, there were these boys that kept bothering her all the time. And she'd always tell the school, hey, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. And they'd brush it off and ignore her because it's like white frat boys. Yeah, bro, always bothering this girl. On top of the fact, she already had other stuff happening at home that she had to deal with. And so one of these days, she was in that hallway. One of those boys went and bumped her, like when he walked past, on purpose. And she was like, you better apologize, because she was already at her wit's end. And they were like, no, and then called the girl the N-word. I just remember when I got the call from school and I got to the school and saw that surveillance tape, right? You see her, because he ends up going in the bathroom. You see her go right in that bathroom behind him, Give it about 2 minutes. You see her come back out. Like, she has beat this boy down in that bathroom, laid him out. So he was so embarrassed. His parents sued the school, the district, and her family. And then she got arrested. She had to do like probation and all. I think it was just so stupid. And mind you, she was a sweetheart. Like, she was a choir student, you know, honor roll kid. She never really bothered anybody, but she's like, I'm sick of this. I'm done. Right? Laid that kid out. So, you know, the black girl beats up this white boy. You know, that wasn't flying. I don't know what ended up happening with the lawsuits and everything. But what a time, what a time, what a time. All right. What is this? All right. Where are we at? Yeah, they arrested the girl. I was so mad. And then I was mad at the mama because the mama took the school side. I'm like, no, y'all don't, no. I was so mad because she had gone to the school a few times and said things, right? And the mom would never come to the school when they needed her, because that was the other thing. Like, the challenge of being in that field and working with the schools and everything and working with different families is sometimes you have parents that just, they don't get it. And you're trying to explain to them, like, no, I know that you have this, but this one here is important. You got to be here. I had one kid who, man, one of my favorites, to be honest, at the time. He never quite got along with the other kids, but he was always very respectful to adults. And anyway, he was in middle school and he was kind of goofing around in the hallway one day, right? And they're playing around or something. And the teacher put her hand out and said, hey, that's enough. And he kind of smacked the teacher's hand down just out of reflex. And so that turned into, oh my God, you assaulted the teacher. And so they suspended him for 5 weeks temporarily. And then they were going to go to a board and then determine whether or not he was going to be expelled. And I told the mom, I really think you need to go to that school and, like, because I'm not the parent. I don't have power of attorney. I can only just be an influence. I have no weight in this. Right. And I told the mom, like, 5 weeks is a lot for what happened. Because it was kind of like a thing. He didn't be like, get your hand down. He kind of just pushed the hand down. But either way, 5 weeks. And then they were planning to, you know, do the full expulsion. And I remember talking to mom, like, you got to go there, because when you're suspended, and a lot of school districts do that, or do this, when a student is suspended, they can't work on their schoolwork because you're suspended. You're suspended from all of the academic programs. So you don't get to make up those tests. You don't get to, you know, take, you know, that exam or turn in that, nothing. They don't give you a homework packet to take home or anything like that. You know, it's different from in-school suspension where they just have you in a room away from everybody and you just can't be around nobody because you don't know how to act. But, you know, all of that's done. I kept explaining that to the mom and she was like, I'll get to it when I get to it. I'll get to it when I get to it. And then she never got to it. And so he had to repeat 8th grade because he ended up failing everything. And I was so mad because there was an opportunity to cut down that suspension, because really that warranted about a week and a half, not 5 weeks. And then they were going to actually do the expulsion, and I forgot who stepped in and saved the kid. But had he been expelled, I don't know what was going to happen, because the mother didn't have a car and there was no way for him to get to any other school nearby, unless he was going to plan like a 3-hour commute. But I don't mean to get on my soapbox, but a lot. All right, let me read a few more comments and then we'll keep it moving here. I want to just make sure I also have covered most of the topics that I want to get here since we started late. Just want to make sure I have this right. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Yes. Oh, Shannon Sharpe. That nonsense. Okay, well, let me read these comments and then we'll talk about Shannon Sharpe. All right. Somebody said technology has messed us up. I feel to an extent, yeah. Somebody said 5K is rent in my city. Exactly. Rent is high out here. Somebody said atrocities were always there. Yes. Social media makes them more frequent to post. Janet Bennett said that, which again, yeah, because I feel like the world's always been terrible, but now that we're overexposed to everything is more in your face. Somebody said 2 hits, she hit him, he hit the floor. And it was so bad because I'm not gonna lie, when I was at the school and they were showing the tape, when I saw her, because they even had the shot of, like, they didn't get the shot of the shoulder thing, but she confronted him. So I guess he must have walked off and then she kind of walked behind him. And then they're in another section of the hallway and you can see her confronting him saying, like, you did this, da 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 da. And it's him and all the girls, laughing, right? So then when I saw that other tape and I'm not gonna lie, when I saw her come out that bathroom, I was biting my cheek. trying not to laugh because I was like, I know that's right. Get good. Exactly. That's what they get. Because sometimes leave people alone, man. But yeah, somebody said, why 5 weeks for a minor act? Because it's a black male student that assaulted a white woman. So I knew how that was going to go. Ayana said, "Now I don't ever want to have this conversation again." This makes me miss my brother. My brother and I used to reenact that scene all the time at the house. That's from Bringing Down the House. Like, we used to randomly reenact all kind of movie scenes, but that was our favorite one because then we could play fight. And you just had to always be ready. I'm like, what are you doing here? I told you it was going to be seeing a lot more of me. I came here to warn you. If you don't stop disrespecting me, it's going to get real rough around here. Back off, Shaniqua. You don't scare me. Like, we used to idiots. But anyway, let's see. All right, Shannon Sharpe. Now, this one, I'm not even going to lie. I don't even have all the details because I was like, I don't have time. This is so stupid. Like I've said before, people need to use more discernment. And in this, I love saying era and in this space, but in this time period, with all the shenanigans that are taking place, you do not want to have your name tied to no nonsense. And there's so many ways to approach this. One, I get annoyed when people do a lot of really foolish things and then they want to rally us up to rally behind them. I don't want to, because, you know, when he came out with his statement, the first thing he started doing was, you know, to take down the black man speech. I'm like, here we go. You weren't thinking about none of that when you was doing all the nonsense, right? And it's crazy because you know that when you get into an element of being elevated and being successful, they cannot wait to bring you back down every single time. They cannot wait. So that should tell you that you should have discernment with the way that you move and know that people are kind of always out to get you. When I saw them text messages, the minute he saw that piece where the girl was talking about 25,000 for each cheek, that should have been your sign to get up out of there, because clearly there's going to be an additional element that's out there that she's after. And the other piece too is that this is not to take away from what she is claiming took place, but there's so many weird things, because I'm looking like, why would you go with Bugsby, the attorney? Like, that's that same attorney from the last lawsuit where the girl was claiming the stuff with Jay-Z, and he turned out to be such a scammer that he got this bar to New York. And so it's kind of like, well, I feel like if you were really, really serious, you wouldn't have called him to be the attorney, but never mind that. The other aspect is I want to just clear up something about consent, because I've seen some people say, you know, well, based on their text messages, she was down with it. Now, I am not even taking sides in this, but from a general standpoint, when it comes to the conversation of consent, even if you are in the act and the act is going, you having a great, let me not reenact with that. I'm not going to do that on here. But even if you are in the act and it's going well, if the word no or stop or I'm uncomfortable or I don't want to do anything like that comes out, done. That's it. That's it. That's it. There's no more. The consent has now ended. I need people to remember that, because I've seen so many say, well, look at the text message. This is what she said, because they was having some wild conversations in that. She's talking about, give me the black baby gravy. I'm like, that was the first time I've ever heard of that phrase. That's a phrase there. But he was throwing me off because I'm like, all that race playing, give me the big black this and that. And I'm like, and you just sitting there entertaining it, Shannon. And then it don't help. You're like, how old is Shannon? What is he, 54? How old is Shannon Sharpe? I said how old. I ain't asked for none of that other stuff. They always want to give you everything but what you ask for. He is 56, right? 56. The girl, I forgot how old. I just know it's under 23. She's technically an adult. I just don't see I don't know, man. All I'll say is this. Me personally, I will not entertain anybody that's like under 27, 26, because at that point, I have kids that I've worked with that are now that age. And it feels like I'd be entertaining kids that I work with. So I don't even go that route. Now, everybody has free agency to do what they want with other consenting adults, right? But I just feel that at that age, you'd want more for yourself than to go and get some random girl you met at the gym and go that route. And if you're going to go that route, then you need to be strategic and also have discernment. This is where that conversation of NDAs and making sure that everything is understood, that everybody's on the same page, and this is what we're doing, and this is all it's going to be, and leave it at that. But he wasn't even smart with how he did things, because even the phone calls and stuff that came out, like because now we get that he's acknowledging to wanting to choke the girl out and all this other random stuff or whatever else has happened. Even when you hear that conversation, the minute I kept hearing her say his name, Shannon, I was like, Shannon, a light bulb should have went off and told you that that conversation was being recorded at that point, that you should probably know something ain't right here, right? And her being very, very specific about the offenses that he did and the way that she carefully laid it out in those conversations. Clearly, this is going to be utilized in court. Like, y'all just don't be thinking, right? And it's just like, I don't get it. I just feel like when you get to a certain level of success, these are things you have to kind of be careful about. And again, don't have all the details. I am not taking sides, but it's like discernment, people. Let that be the theme for 2025. My theme for 2025 is actually audacity. Because at this point, so many people have had the audacity to just do Lord knows what and be successful. So I was like, I'm going to start doing the same thing for myself. I'm going to start applying to jobs I know I ain't qualified for. I'm going to apply for stuff where they're paying $600,000 a year. I'm qualified. Yep. That's the audacity for me. That's where I'm at. But, the other theme needs to be discernment, because I'm like, you just have to do better. And it's like, now look at what's happening. The ESPN stuff shut down. That's a wrap, right? Done. And you don't worry about it. And so it's like, I don't know. I need people to be careful. I need people to, and it's not being careful saying like, be careful doing your terrible things, but it's like being careful, just again, that conversation of long-term, right? My theme that I've always lived by, if you're going to do something stupid, be smart about it. And so he has not been smart about any of this. I don't know. Like, that's just so damn young. And when people try to say like, because I've seen some things say, well, some of these young girls, no, because you can tell how old somebody is just from a conversation with them, right? And to me, women that are like 20 years old, 21, 22, they still have baby faces, right? A lot of times, they still even have like the fat in their face. You can start telling when somebody's like 26, 27, because the fat has kind of, got absorbed or whatever. And now you start to see their jawline and the definition in their face with like the cheekbones. If they haven't put on weight, you can start telling people's age a little bit as they get to their mid to late 20s. But I don't know. Everybody to each his own as far as what your preference is. I just know for me, no. But I think there's some foolery with the Bugsby lawyer and how they've been doing things. I think Shannon had said, release the full phone call, release everything. I agree with him. Put it all out. And not because we're being perverse, but as a way to clear what may be alleged or what has been accused. Because the stuff does sound a little altered and edited, but Shannon, why? You were having such a great 2024. I don't know. This is why I be minding my business. You see why I be in the house? I'd be in the house watching my shows and doing. Take a sip to that. Like, man. I don't know. We'll see how this unfolds. But something about her lawyer rubs me the wrong way, which is why I'm really looking at all of this from a strong side eye, because we saw the shenanigans that lawyer tried to pull last time. And we talked about that when everything first came out and stuff wasn't quite adding up. And again, I will never be one to take away from somebody who's been on the receiving end of any kind of aggression or, an offense. So I'm not going to be judge and juror on this one, but something ain't right in the water. And that's why I say, like, folks need to really have discernment with what it is they engage with and even who they entertain, right? There's some stuff I just will not entertain, period. There's some folks I'd be feeling bad. Folks will send you all kind of messages and they never get a response from me because I want no parts. Even like with just this channel, I often get cussed out by my good friends because they're like, why don't you freaking take the sponsorships? Because they pay really well, which they do. There's some sponsorships that sometimes will offer you, excuse me, this went down the wrong pipe. Hold on. There's some that will offer you sponsorships that, you might get like $400 or $500 for a video or this, that, and the third. But a lot of times, most of the companies that reach out to me have nothing to do with what we talk about here. I'm like, if you want me to do an endorsement of something, can it at least mirror what our content is about? Can it at least mirror something I would stand behind? You know, a freaking skin bleaching company sent me an email some years back. I was like, do you watch the channel? Like, do you? I look good. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, do you watch the channel? Like, do you pay attention to what we're talking about here? Why would I endorse a skin bleaching cream on this channel? For all the conversations we've had about texturism and featureism and phenotype and colorism and black this and black that, why the heck you think and then I'm not even gonna tell you how much they were offering. They weren't even offering that much. It was under $200. I was like, y'all stupid as hell. Like, don't email me. So it's kind of like there's some things I just don't even want to entertain, right? And then I just feel also, this is just me. It's nothing against the people that do the sponsorships, because who knows? Maybe I'll be doing them in a few years. But I know I sometimes get a little annoyed when I'm watching a video and then you got to get through 10 minutes. Well, it's not 10 minutes. Normally they do it in less than a minute, you know, where the video's getting good. And then out of nowhere, they stop to start talking about whatever, something, or, you know, they'll be like, it'll be like, we'll be on here. And I'm like, man, and the problem with Shannon Sharpe is he didn't think. And sometimes for people who don't think, you know, sometimes maybe it's because your brain just doesn't have the nutrients. And that's why we have Nutravitamin or something. And you talk about it for like the next 30 seconds. I'm like, you know what? But, no judgment on my end, to each his own. We might have to start doing some sponsorships or something, but I don't know. I just know for Shannon, when you have a lot going for you, you got to put that first. I get it. Everybody wants to have a good time. Hell, we're all human. Sex is human nature. We all enjoy it. It's great. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But it's like you're gonna have to start thinking with this head and not the other one sometimes. That's all, right? Man, 56. What do you 56 and 21. And then at 56, listen, I'm not there in age yet, but I'm sure things work a little bit differently. You probably got to pace yourself a little bit differently so you don't stroke out and stuff. And you want to go with some fast, active, young, energized, just getting started 21-year-old. You about to stroke out. No pun intended. Like, what? Man. All right, let's read some comments here. Somebody said a masterclass on how to sell your soul. I don't remember what this is about, but okay. Just put another comment for context, because I don't know what that part is. Oh God, Stephen A. Smith. Can I drag him too while I'm at it? First of all, Stephen, nobody asked you to run for president, so do not. Okay. Now, I don't speak on behalf of the Black community, and I don't speak on behalf of nobody, but I can say how I feel. But I'm sure many of us are telling you no, because you know he's been talking about, he's been considering it, and people have been asking. I'm like, who? There's nobody. When I'm at the barber shop, there and you know they have all kind of conversations in there. There has never been a conversation where somebody's like, you know who needs to run for president? Stephen A. Smith. Yeah, I mean that brother right there. That has never been a conversation. Stephen, do not run. Do not run. Don't. You're gonna be in the way, right? No more celebrities, please. No more celebrities. Can we get some people that understand the economy, that understand civics, that understand global affairs, that understand cause and effect, that understand healthcare and systems and commerce and education and innovation and long-term strat? Like, those are the people, right? Not some random person who critiques celebrities all day. We're good on that. Like, you've already embarrassed yourself enough. We already dragged you before when you had to get on you about that Jerry Jones nonsense, and now you want to run? No, nobody asked you. And then for him to also go and take out that whole whatever he did, where he was talking about how he's the acceptable Negro because he knows how to behave. And what do you want? A white appreciation certificate and a pat on the back? Like, shut up. Irritating. Now, I will give it to him this. I don't think you'll ever see him caught up in this same kind of situation as Shannon. I'll give him that. He kind of at least understands that part. But Shannon, Stephen, you don't got to run. You stick with sports. That's your bailiwick, because you've had a handful of terrible political takes. Actually, a lot of them, to be honest. So we good over here. We good. Somebody said the race play. He was born in 68. Then that's something. I already don't play in the snow, but you ain't got to worry about me doing no race play. Like that to me, that goes into that conversation of that idea of objectifying Black sexuality, Black endowment, and everything else like that. And so that, no, absolutely not. That should have been your sign to get out, right? But some folks like their ego stroked. So somebody said he's choked and assaulted women before. Somebody said Black people getting 0 passes in 2025. People need to act right. Like my thing is, if you're gonna be doing wrong, please do not come over here asking us to rally the troops on your behalf. And I'm gonna say this too. This goes back to what I was saying in the earlier segment when I was talking about sinners, and I was saying, you know, there was gonna be a lot of folks who start trying to reappear, show back up, right? Because like I said, the door is closed. Candace Owens. It's interesting. I'm getting traction on that video again because she's kind of been in the press. So people are watching that video and I guess they think it's recent. But again, she's a perfect example, right? She is trying to figure out where her lane is. And here's the thing. A few logical sound bites, again, do not make up for years of damage. And so even though Candace in some moments is making sense, great. But we already saw where you stood. We see what your foundation was in, and we saw how you moved. We saw how you made an entire documentary to combat the narrative around George Floyd and paint him to be a drug addict and say that he didn't die from this officer putting all of his body weight on this man's neck for 8 minutes. He died because he had drugs in the system. That's something I don't forget. I don't forget that you said reparations was ghetto, right? And even using the term ghetto, we know exactly what that was rooted in and who that was for, because it wasn't for us. Right? We know exactly when it came to Breonna Taylor and how you said she brought it on herself. So in those moments like that, those are things I will never forget. I see how you move. And you even pretty much said that even when it comes to just how you see the world, you have a bias for people who come from your same, like as far as being from the Caribbean. So, you know, beautiful stand for yours, but it's also telling me as a Black American that it's F me and my folks too. So it's kind of like, okay, fine, you be over there. And so no, there's gonna be a whole lot of folks who start trying to pop back in here. You saw Byron Donalds getting cooked at that town hall. If you remember, Byron Donalds is the congressman from Florida. He represents a district that is majority white, and because of that, he has to play the game and tap dance. And he has been one of Orange Man's loudest cheerleaders, even though he got no cabinet position, right? But he was at that town hall getting cooked, and he was like, "Oh, y'all not about to all hound down on the Black man." No, not Mr. We were good under segregation. And not from the context of the idea of community, collective, anything, but just because you were, again, trying to appease a bunch of white folks while you're not even married to somebody Black, while you talking about the Black community, this, save it. Like, there's going to be a whole lot of folks trying to creep on back in, right? Because the grift, folks don't know where to go. Orange Man has been so out of pocket, even the biggest tap dancers are like, wait, now even this is too much for me. Tim Scott been real quiet with his wife that he don't want to be married to. He's been real quiet over there. You got to stick that out because he just knew he was going to get a cabinet position. Nope. Right? And so the nonsense is here. Right? All right. Where are we at here? Somebody said enough with the celebrity leaks. I don't pay attention. It's so trashy. Well, I feel like that was put out on purpose for the sake of the lawsuit. That's what that is to me. But they just, I don't know. I just need discernment. Like we said, discernment. Something should tell you yes or no. Like, don't be a part of certain bits of nonsense. I also, let me see, anything else? Just to clear one thing up too, because somebody said something in one of these videos when I was talking about the public schooling piece with the vouchers. The point that I'm making with the vouchers is that when it comes to the idea of defunding public school and privatizing it and putting it all into voucher programs, so the idea of school choice, what ends up happening is the most wealthy tend to be the ones that get all the vouchers. That's normally what always happens. So if we talk about the state of Florida, 70% of all the vouchers for, K through 12 school went to families that already had their kids in private school, families that already could afford it. And then when you get to Arkansas, 95% of all of the vouchers went to families that already had their kids in private school. What's going to end up happening is the middle class, the working class, and the working poor are going to be left out. And so that's the point that I was trying to make with that. And so what else did I want to cover? And then as far as somebody had asked again with the constitutional crisis, we just saw with the judge being arrested because it was claimed that they were being in contempt and what's the other thing? Not even being in contempt of court, obstructing justice. I said the irony, right? I just think folks got to really be tapped in because at this point, the colleges have been under attack. They're getting funding yanked and pulled for not complying. So we have colleges that are under attack. You have museums that are under attack. The Department of Education is almost gone. Judges are now being doxxed and arrested. The FBI is compromised. The Department of Justice is compromised. Our healthcare is compromised. The CDC is now compromised. The NIH is now compromised. Human and Health Services as a whole is being gutted. All those fall under that, I think. Compromised. FDA compromised. CIA, even when it comes to global affairs, being gutted. Tap in, folks. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Calvin, did you hear about Pakistan and India are fighting now? I mean, they've always kind of been going at it. I'm out of the loop. I'd have to go back and look and read up on that because I don't have the range for that conversation right now. Wait, where's... I'm trying to like piece together. Sometimes you guys will like leave multiple comments and I'm trying to like piece the comments together so I can read the whole thing. Like, man. Somebody said, that's your future president. Show some respect. What is that, Stephen A. Smith? Man. Child. Nonsense. There we go. All right. I'm adjusting the camera for that person that was saying. Somebody said, don't ever go full Rick James. Stay out of both kinds of snow. I grew up around that, so I was never interested, right? Have I heard about Ibrahim Traore? I think I said that right. I'm sure you know he's a leader of Burkina Faso. Can you talk about the U.S. coming for Africa? Let me come back to that too. I don't want to be on here just saying stuff wrong, but I know you also tie France into this conversation, and that gold is going to be an interesting conversation. So let me write that down, Mimi, and I'm going to come back to that one. I don't want to be loud, strong, and wrong yet. All right. I'll be trying to make sure I know what I'm talking about before I just come on here. Yes, the door's closed on Candace, y'all. I'm sorry. It just closed. And like I said, a lot of times, all you need to know is if you, I say this about a lot of content creators that paint themselves to be like voices for the black, this, black, that. Like I said, if their core audience is white, they are not for us. There's a reason why a large white collective is following them. It's not saying that you can't have a white set of followers. There's white people that watch this channel. But the thing is, if 60, 70, 80% of your channel is not us, and 90% of your content is about us, that's all we need to know, right? And even a lot of them are having a hard time with the nonsense because they've been trying to act like all this stuff is fine. And even some of them are starting to backtrack on the things because that one that was talking about, I ain't never heard black people say, oh, we need the Department of Education. They've been real quiet lately, right? Money getting affected because that stock market crashing. But let's see. Somebody said, I'm curious, who are these content creators? I don't like saying their names because then I feel like I give them a platform for people to go and look at, and then you just, but one of them is an older black male that I will say is probably in his 50s that to me has just, if there's anybody I'm the most annoyed with, it's that person, right? and it's not even Boyce Watkins. Y'all know I be whacking him all the time, but it's a different guy who I think has painted himself to be all about like community and what's good for Black folks, but everything, his entire platform is just whacking the Democrats all day, which is, you know, to each his own. The parties can get their smoke, but what happens is while he's whacking them all day, Republicans get a pass for all the nonsense that's happening. Orange Man gets a pass for everything, and every time there's something that's stripped away from us, or they do some other crazy executive order, he's one of the one. Well, hear me out. Like he stays trying to make sense of nonsense and make it seem like everything is all good, right? And so, like that person there, like, whew, give me the strength, man. And there's a bunch of other stupid people out there as well. No, but yeah, Boyce, I ain't crazy over, but I'm not giving people platforms, not at my expense. No, Van Jones, yeah, I don't really consider him a content creator. He already got his check. Him and Meghan McCain made their money from that investor, and so he's going to be on Hands Across America all day with his check on the side. But yeah, I don't want to give a lot of these people free advertising, so they ain't getting it on this channel. I mean, there's a few folks out. Somebody just put exactly what I was talking about in the chat. But yeah, man. Anyway, so I'm gonna leave it alone and leave it at that. But yeah, there's a lot of folks who the grift is wild out here. But again, eventually everybody comes back home. Once they get burned, they come back to the community. All right, y'all, I was just playing Wakanda forever. Nah, we ain't having it. Something else I want to cover too, just to clear up, because some folks I don't think are getting this. This whole HBCU thing that Trump just put out there, please don't fall for the nonsense. Symbolism nugget. There's nothing in any of that executive order that brings any additional funding to HBCUs, but let's read about it anyway, right? So he had this new executive order, and it's all pushed around the idea of Black excellence. By the way, I really don't like that phrase. And what opened my eyes to that phrase, the channel Nappy Headed Hobo did a whole video about it, like the idea of Black excellence. And ever since I saw that video, I was like, you know what? That's right. Because why do we have to always be, way up here to be seen as decent people? Like, yeah, I should just be able to be who I want to be. So ever since then, I'm like, yeah, I don't like that phrase. But anyway, on the surface, the order aligns with the efforts of past administrations, and it acknowledges HBCU's essential contributions to Black leadership, intellect, and economic mobility. By the way, just to clarify, he put in a new executive order aimed at HBCUs. We've already been saying HBCUs gonna have to tread carefully because we don't know what we're about to get. They got the museums and everything else. HBCUs are next, right? Anyway, however, it lacks concrete commitment to new federal funding. I'm gonna say that again. However, it lacks concrete commitment to new federal funding. Notably, the Biden administration paired its 2021 executive order with nearly $1.6 billion in immediate investments, announcing financing within a week of the executive order. Between 2021 and 2024, the Biden administration directed $17 billion, including $1.3 billion in 2024 alone. The Trump order currently offers a vision without the necessary financial backing. However, he issued a fact sheet related to the investments his first administration supported regarding HBCUs. A serious investment in HBCUs requires a commitment of funds, as Adam Harris argues the state must provide. State governments have long had a history of falling short on their legal and financial obligations to HBCUs. Tennessee State, give them their $2 billion. And you saw what they did with Tennessee. Once it was shown that Tennessee State was owed $2 billion from the state, they gutted the entire board, put some white folks and a bunch of tokens in the middle of there. And yeah, now they're in charge. That $2 billion ain't never coming. When the Second Morrill Act of 1890 required states to provide land grant institutions for Black students, if they, lost my spot. If they excluded them from historically white institutions, many states complied in name only. They took federal money, but failed to provide matching state support. State of Tennessee to TSU. The new executive order speaks to this history, encouraging states to meet matching fund obligations, but encouragement is not enough. Without accountability or enforceable mechanisms, states will continue to neglect HBCUs. Harris illustrates through many examples in his book that the gap between federal expectations and state action has left 1890 HBCU underfunded and overburdened for decades. In a Forbes staff report titled "How America Cheated Its HBCU," Susan Adams and Hank Tucker drew attention to how this lack of support persists today. As of 2025, many HBCUs still struggle with inadequate infrastructure, lower faculty pay, and limited state investment, especially compared to nearby HWIs. Private philanthropy has increased in recent years, but it is a supplement, not a substitute for public funding. According to the study by the National Association of College and University Business Officers and the Common Fund, fiscal year 2024 marked a noteworthy increase in average new gifts to endowment reported by study participants. The total gifts reported by HBCUs in this year's study were 91.9 million, up from 74.7 million reported last year, while promising to increase the fall short. I lost my spot. Sorry. Okay. Despite its limitations, the 2025 executive order includes elements worth watching. Its emphasis on innovation and public-private collaboration offers potential, particularly in aligning HBCU curricula with high-demand fields such as technology, healthcare, and advanced manufacturing. However, these aspirations may prove difficult to realize without comprehensive funding strategy. Harry Williams, the president and CEO of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, which represents public HBCUs, stated in a press release, the TMCF government relations team has worked closely with the White House to advocate for the inclusion of our policy priorities in the executive order over the past 3 months, and we are very pleased that many of our priorities reflected in the final version of the document promulgated today. Can I go back to that $91.9 million? And I just want to show you something really quick. So that's $91.9 million in gifts to all HBCUs, right? Howard University's endowment in 2024 was $1.03 billion. Like that endowment has been growing. Because when I was there, it was 585 million, and then it dropped to 324, and then it floated around $400 million for a few years. Now it's up to $1 billion. $1.03 billion. That's just Howard. So $91 million does sound like a lot. But when you spread it across over 100 HBCUs, it's really not a lot. $90 million is one faculty facility. That's one research building being created, right? And so, again, where they're talking about the idea of donations, that's beautiful in donations. But it just kind of goes to show that a lot of the HBCUs are really at the mercy of the state governments. Howard's in a different predicament because it's under the Freedmen's Bureau, so it gets some federal funding that Congress votes on. But, again, God bless these HBCUs. The other thing, too, is that Orange Man also pretty much created a council that's supposed to oversee these programs being run at the HBCUs, which makes me a little nervous because I wonder how much that's going to affect the idea of curriculum and what may possibly change, right? And so that makes me a little nervous. Ultimately, these executive orders raise a broader question. What does true support for HBCUs look like? If the goal is to ensure these institutions can continue producing visionary leaders, researchers, and innovators, then aspirational language must be paired with financial investment. History shows that progress for HBCUs has often been hard-won, whether with this latest initiative or whether this latest initiative becomes transformational or simply another missed opportunity will depend on the political will to move from symbolic gestures to concrete long-term action. And so, again, with what the Trump administration is doing is they're saying, hey, they're telling the states, you guys need to actually make sure that you're funding these HBCUs the same way you fund the majority institutions. But the problem is there will be no enforcement of that. So if we think politically, this kind of goes back to what happened with the Voting Rights Act. One of the reasons why we got the Voting Rights Act in the 60s was mainly because there were these rules where it was like, okay, everybody can vote, but you got to make sure everybody has everybody can vote. Yay. And, you had about 13 states that were like, they can vote if they can count some jelly beans, if they can take the literacy test, if they can prove that they can read, if they can pay the poll tax, if they can do all these other different things. And we might have some of our boys stand by the polls and, intimidate everybody and threaten their lives if they show up and do all these different things. And so there had to literally be legislation implemented to ensure that the states would make sure that we had our voting rights. Like when you go into the origin of why we got the Voting Rights Act, it goes back to those states that were refusing to comply with a lot of the orders that were put into place. And so it's almost like the same thing with HBCUs, going back to Tennessee State. And some of you guys on here are alum from the university. We followed that story and saw how there's a whole $2 billion missing over however many years. And they still didn't get their money. And so, with everything, Orange Man, if you're going to put it out there, you either need to back it with the funds, or you need to actually implement it where there's federal legislation to ensure that the states are actually meeting these requirements. Because now that it's a free-for-all and everybody can do what they want, none of the states are going to meet the requirement. They don't, whatever, what you going to do about it? You ain't, unless you telling us to do it, we ain't doing it. You can encourage us, but encouragement isn't tangible. Encouragement isn't enforceable. So whatever. So we'll see what happens with that. What else did I have here? Oh, Elon. I'm about sick time talking about him, but Elon is now claiming he's ready to move on from government because everybody's being mean to him. And he said that the radical, liberal, left-wing Democrats it's just been so hard. I'm like, no, honestly, what's really happened is now that you've secured all these multi-billion-dollar contracts for Starlink and all of your companies after you've gutted and fired and got rid of all these people, you're already set and you're good to go. So you no longer have an interest in the U.S. government because you got everything that you wanted. You got everything that you wanted to be deregulated. You got all these different deals. Tesla's going to get some more money. Starlight or whatever that crap is going to get some more money. All these different things are getting exactly what he wanted, right? He was also able to dismantle the agencies that were investigating him, like USAID and all these other places that, because, there were all kind of investigations into his business practices. They are all now destitute and disbanded and gutted and chopped down. And so he's gotten everything that he wants. So he's ready to jump ship, but he's going to paint it as if everyone's just after me. It's so hard. I'm like, it wasn't hard when you showed up with the chainsaw and was out there running and rolling, and it was a good time then. So he's gotten what he wants. Now he's going to pretend that all of a sudden it's just so hard. I don't care. I don't feel bad for you. I pray that you receive everything you put into the universe tenfold. Orange Man 2. Yeah, there's that. Okay, let us read some comments before we wind down for the night. Somebody said, Mimi, I'm not sure what you're talking about. I said, I will absolutely never. Oh, okay. You're talking about the Candace stuff. Yes. Somebody said Candace has no integrity and will throw us under the bus again for her gain. And for the people who keep trying to argue me down with her, because there's some folks who are like, no, man, she making sense. Okay. Well, if reparations was handed out and they decided they're going to pick one black person to be in charge of distribution, do you trust Candace Owens with your money? There's that. You know who we haven't seen in a while? Vivek. I know it's rumored that he's going to be running for governor of Ohio, but we ain't seen you, Vivek. All the people who did all the tap dancing really have just kind of been filtered out. Nikki Haley, that's an interesting one too. She literally threw her entire political career away. Because first of all, what killed her off, right? She was the other one that was running, and she was running on all the anti-black talking points, and slavery wasn't about, I forgot what she said. Civil War wasn't about slavery and some other stupid things she said, and so on and so forth. And but her selling point, which was really highly respected by a lot of Republicans at the time, was that she wasn't Trump, and that she said our democracy is at stake. He cannot get back into office. That's why I'm running, and I'm not dropping out. And as much as I couldn't stand her, I was like, okay, on that side, GOP, act like y'all got some sense, because you push Christie out, you push Vivek out, you push the rest of them out. All you got is Nikki left. And DeSantis was going to be crazy anyway. So what y'all going to do, right? Clearly she got pushed out right away. What did she do? Endorses Orange Man. Well, no, actually she gave it some time. She was like, no, I can't. I stand behind. We got to care about America. Gave it a little bit of time. Started endorsing Orange Man. Then she thought she was going to have a shot in the cabinet. Orange Man said, no, you didn't say too much about me. Don't worry about it. And we ain't seen her. It's looking a little rough for her. So I think her political career is done too. And it's like the very fact is that people stuck out that primary specifically for her with the hopes that somebody else would be the nominee. And people gave their vote to her because she had the promise of, I'm not going to be him. I'm not going to endorse him afterwards, only for her to backtrack and then do that same thing. So that pissed off all of them. So yeah, her time is up too. Done. Vivek, done. A mess. Byron Donalds, as far as running for governor of Florida, I don't know how that's going to go. We'll see. Kanye, nope, ain't doing it. Nope. The door is closed on Kanye for me. I'm sorry. It's been closed. Slavery was a choice. You stay over there with them choices you made. What up, Dark Titan? That is an interesting quote. Yeah, because then even with the HBCU thing and the Black excellence, this, that, and third, I'm like, you spend all day gutting our history. You spend all day cutting every program that benefits us. You spend all day trying to strip everything down, but then you want to give a symbolism nugget and be like, oh yeah, we're helping HBCUs to achieve excellence. No, it sounds like you're trying to set up all these students to work in manufacturing. That's what it sounds like to me. But we'll see. Like, man. All right. Did we talk about the new Coco Jones album yet? I briefly talked about it, but like I said, I liked it. I liked the other side of love on there. I wish this had like just one or two up tempos, and it would have been good. Or I mean, it was still good, but I would have liked it a little bit more. I think I told you I saw her live maybe a month or two ago, and she was actually really, really good. She has a really, really nice pocket in her live voice. And it was impressive because the sound was all messed up, but she was able to carry through. She has a great stage presence. But no, I think the album is pretty nice. What else did I like on that album? I got to listen to it again. But that was the main song I kept talking about, was the other side of love. Where are you at, Coco? Let me look through the track list and what else did I really like on there. There's another one that was really, really nice. Damn. The By Myself was cool. On Site, I think, is a fun one for the front of the album. Yeah, it's cool. I just want a few more up tempos. That's about it. But I'm rooting for her. I want her to win. She seems like a really nice person. I did see that snippet of the Breakfast Club chewing out her label for not sending the album to them until 7:44, and the show was supposed to start 15 minutes later. I totally agree with the sentiments, but I do feel that should have been a conversation held off air, because now they're absolutely right with the idea of why would you send us an album to review when we only got 15 minutes to listen to it. But I would have had that conversation live on air, because one, that's something a little bit above her, and that's a conversation with management, because now it's kind of low-key watering down her brand and making it seem like she don't got her stuff together when, she's there trying to promote her album and all. Plus, the Breakfast Club, at the same time, y'all are still a messy show. Like, y'all are still... If I ever was a famous celebrity, I probably wouldn't go on the Breakfast Club, to be honest. Like, nah, I'm good. Hello from Zurich. Okay. Expat organ voter. How's that working out there in Zurich? I feel like the air is crisp there, like it's crisp and clean. I've only been I've never been to Zurich. I take that back. Haven't been to Zurich, but I have been to Germany, and I've been to Belgium and Switzerland and France and Germany, Austria, Italy, and the Azores. Let's see. Oh, Dion. I'm about to say Dion. Leon Thomas has a nice album. I really enjoy that project too. That's been a nice one. The song, my favorite song on that one is the one about the phone. Let me see what that song is called. Leon Thomas. It's called The Answer Your Phone. I really love that one. That's the one I really, really like. Right. Let's see. Benita Gardner said, what they did to TSU is the plan for all Black colleges under 45. I see the nonsense coming. I'm hoping. Well, I really don't feel that Orange Man is going to make it through the 4 years, to be honest. That's the little glimmer of hope that I have. Now, I don't know what will take place that will make that a reality or make that come to fruition. Something is telling me it ain't happening, right? I don't know if that's from natural causes. I don't know if that's because somebody's just real pissed off, and before you know it, I don't know. But something is telling me he ain't making them 4 years. And I think he and Elon are still going to have a big falling out. And I think stuff will be put out there. And we're going to see some nonsense happening. Let's see. Calvin, what's your take on the 10-21 minute? Oh, all female space flight? I mean, I guess. Kind of cool. It was weird watching them try to paint it as this great moment for like women in aviation, all that. And cool. But at the same time, we're watching all of the advancements and progression for women in this country be stripped away politically and through executive order and through a bunch of crooked politicians and everything like that. So for me, looking from the outside in, I'm also not a woman, so I can't tell women how to feel. But that just to me was a symbolism nugget. Cool little symbolism thing. All right, yeah, they go to space and then come back down. Yay. But nothing is going to change at the moment. It's not going to open any new doors right now for women, especially in anything where you have a government that's actively working against everybody that's not a straight white male that's also Christian. So yeah, but I was scared for Gail. I ain't gonna lie. I was like, I would not be signing up to go on nobody's rocket to no space. Like I was like, I don't know. We done seen too many of them rockets explode during the test run. So I don't know how they signed up for that. And then I heard that clip of when they had the moment when they're coming back down and it's before the helicopter drops. So they're free falling for a few seconds and all you hear is, I said, see, wouldn't have been me. Would have not been me. Somebody said Tesla. Yeah, Mimi, I saw the Tesla stock been sinking. What did I see? They lost 71% in revenue just with sales as well. Oh yeah, because Elon said he's going back to Tesla too. I'm surprised they didn't push him out yet. As far as that board. Somebody said, when did Coco Jones release a new album? It came out on Friday. One of my good friends woke me up out of my nap at 11:45 to remind me. They have a show out here, or she has a show here on the 7th for anybody interested. I might go. I don't know. Oh, look, boy, I did this whole live. Say you're saying right. I forgot my challenge was to not say so many rights and no's and likes in these videos, but it's been a day. We already saw the live wasn't even trying to start right when we started it, so I get a pass for today. We'll pick back up on the next live. I'm so pissed that I didn't get a chance to have all my sound and stuff set up, but apparently the sound is fine, so I guess we'll be good. Somebody said, apparently Coco Jones is being sabotaged, but no one has ever been more sabotaged than Normani and Tinashe. Ironically, Coco Jones' taste remind me of Normani. Normani, I feel bad with because I some people, the cars just don't always align. She's somebody I'm still rooting for. I thought her project was decent. I didn't want her voice to be a bit more present on the songs. The production was really good, but they kind of have her hidden in the production. But I still thought it was a nice project. It's crazy. They didn't give the girl no music video, nothing. They just put the album out. But I'm glad she put the album out. I think that's the one thing you can say. The hardest thing sometimes as an artist is just getting the project out, because you never think it's ready. And then for people who are signed, you're constantly dealing with all kind of label politics and logistics, and this gets pushed back, and then the A&R person might have got fired, and now you got a new A&R person, but they're not interested in your genre because they're rooted in heavy metal, and so at least you got the project out. I'll give her that. Let's see. I have not had a chance to listen to the Carrie Hilson project. Marie either, Sarah. I did see the snippets. I gotta catch up, y'all. I feel like I've been behind on a whole lot. First of all of February, I was glued to the other MacBook. Oh, we still gotta have the funeral service. To the other MacBook, getting that New Jack Swing thing done. Like even though it was only like an hour and some change, there were like 600 clips we had to get through. We had to like download and piece together. I'm saying we, like there was other people editing that I had to get through. It took forever to get that thing done. I was like, man, I was so tired. My eyes were just dry, just sitting and scrolling. And you go through all that to use half of a second of a thing. And then I got mad because it just got flagged like 2 days ago. And so unfortunately, I had to pull the snippet of En Vogue when they're performing lies on Showtime at the Apollo. I had to pull it out of the video because the owner of the video was like, that's copyright. I'm like, you don't own it either. It ain't your song, but I don't feel like fighting on YouTube. So I just pulled the piece out of the video so I could keep it monetized. Because then once they demonetize you, it's harder to, or at least the video doesn't really show up in the algorithm as much. So there's that. So yeah, I'm behind. I'm behind on a lot of stuff, especially music. Said, am I ready for a black pope? Look, if the next pope is black, you're going to see a new strand of racism we ain't never seen before. It's going to be spiritual. Boy, woo. I mean, we've had black popes before, by the way, but there's going to be some slurs we ain't never heard of before. Folks going to be leaving the religion. They ain't going to be no more confessionals. We ain't telling nothing to that mother. Man. All right. Let's see. Thoughts on Lizzo starring in the Rosetta Tharpe biopic? That'd be an interesting watch. I'm happy Rosetta Tharpe is getting a biopic. I don't know much about Lizzo as far as acting. I've never seen anything minus the piece that she was in on that movie Hustlers, which is probably not the best example. So, we'll see how it goes. I feel like she would have a respect enough for Rosetta Tharpe to really take the role super serious and really probably give her all to it. So let's just see how it goes. We can always at least see it out, right? So we'll see how that goes. Now I need her to stop setting people up to get dragged. I'm like, I love that she loves Janet, but please stop pissing off the Madonna fans because I'm tired of seeing my fave get dragged all the time or whatever. Yeah, them Britney and Madonna fans was having a field day on Janet. I'm like, I don't feel like fight with y'all because I'm too old for this, but can y'all relax? Let's see. Two-thirds of the new Cardinals Pope Francis appointed are people of color. It could happen. I feel like it could happen, but the racism ain't went nowhere, but we'll see. Yeah, all right. So I'll hang for a few minutes. Let me see here. Who did I nominate to sing for this funeral for the Macbook? This Macbook has been through so much. It's been whatchamacallit. I'm acting like I'm throwing it in the trash. It's just going to be put away somewhere for a minute. I've already transferred everything out of this, which took all weekend, right? All those albums and unreleased tracks. And I mean, I have a lot of my stuff, in external hard drives, but this still had stuff saved in it. But we've just sat here. Man. So yeah, we're having our funeral service for the MacBook. Thank this MacBook for all of the So What Happens and in the news episodes when we still did those. Like I said, I want to bring those back, and for the comedically hard-headed episodes. And I even edited my first two album covers on this. And what else is on here? I think I built my website on here. The CalvinMichaels.com was made right in here. What else did we do? I'm just making sure this gets a good obituary. Like we said, the Generation Black episodes were in here. The whole R&B is actually the R&B is Dead series, the very first one. That was one of the first videos that I actually edited. Because if you remember, I used to just do live, or not even live. I just do a video where I just talk for 10 or 15 minutes and then get off the camera. I didn't edit videos. I didn't start editing until this baby showed up. So you can thank this baby for the edited videos. And this only happened because we were doing a Generation Black web series. And so because of the Generation Black web series, I learned how to video edit. And then that opened some additional doors, which got me a little pocket change where I was able to afford some studio equipment, which then eventually led to the podcast. Because remember, my sound used to be terrible up until about 2018-ish, once I kind of built up the studio and we had a real microphone. Because remember, I used to have that echo when I moved to the other spot. And then, and then the podcast led to, we had the albums, and that led to Pull Over So I Can Hit You short film, which got us to some film festivals. The book club was done right on this. For those on the book club, we've been doing the book club for, I think, 3 years, maybe. All of them are right here out of this. What am I missing here? I'm skipping some stuff, but thank you. We appreciate you. You have done a good. Well done, thy good and faithful servant. That's some verse I heard in the Bible before. We have done a great job here. Now, which one of y'all gonna sing? Because I ain't doing it. You want to hear singing, you need to go stream my album. Let's see. Let's see. Full circle moment. Took you almost a year, ripped to the 2010. Yeah, this thing was 2012, right? You could donate it to a child in need. I'm not even gonna stress a child out with this thing. Maybe this is not going to help them. This honestly, this is something that needs to just go ahead and be put away. It's too outdated. So even like I kept the operating system I was using. This was still on Mojave as far as the Apple operating system, and it was because Pro Tools was not compatible with a lot of the latest software updates at the time, and so I couldn't upgrade it, or I would no longer be able to use Pro Tools. Pro Tools is what I record all my albums in, and what I use to make the Comedically Hard-Headed podcast. So I purposely had to keep this set up to the settings of 2014 and 2020 and 2021 and 2022 and 2024 and everything else like that, right? I mean, Pro Tools is now compatible with the newer stuff, so amen to that. But if you guys knew how hard it is to record an album on this thing, where you'll be having a nice session, you're in good voice, everything is going well, and you know how Apple Macs have that spinning rainbow circle, and you thinking you've been killing it, and you just happen to stop and pause and go check the computer screen, and the circle thing been spinning for 10 minutes, and everything that you thought you recorded did not get recorded. And it was some note that you don't normally hit, and somehow you hit it, and you can't hit it no more, and it ain't recorded, so you just let it go because that meant you were singing too high to begin with, right? If you only knew. And I think back to any time I had a friend, like I have a few friends that I call like my honest ears. So whenever I was doing the album, they would come in, I'd be like, hey, I need you to listen to this, tell me what you think, blah, 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 blah. And opening Pro Tools took like 10 minutes every time on this thing, because this thing just didn't have enough RAM. The RAM, I needed to just go and do something. Like the RAM was just like, Calvin, you're asking for too much. You got whatever this song is that's on 80 different tracks and 20 different keyboards and 2 drum kits, and you got all these stacks. You're asking for too much. And my friends would be sitting there waiting for like 10, 20 minutes. And then as soon as you play it in Pro Tools, if you're using too much RAM for the device, Pro Tools crashes and you get like this sound. And then the sound is all distorted. And then you have to start Pro Tools over, which means another 10 minutes. And then do it all again, right? And then some of the plugins didn't quite work as well. We was going through it. We were going through it here. Amen. But no, this was a great run. This was some seed money. My mama actually gave me the money to get this, and then my good friend Whitney at the time used to work at the Apple Store and got me the discount. So see how seeds are planted, and we fast forward a decade and some change, and how far we've gotten. When I got this, my channel had, I think, 3,000 subscribers, maybe 3, I think, right? Which I was very happy for. The goal when I finally started having to go for the channel was to have 500, just 500 subscribers. I was good with that. Then I got 1,000. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll go for 2. And we got to 2, and after 2, I wasn't aiming for nothing. Then 3 came, and yeah, then we just started growing over time. So yeah, all right. Who's doing the song here? Let me. Where y'all at? Somebody, y'all gonna sing something in here. So look, y'all playing games. Somebody said, Calvin, I saw you today. I was walking up 7th Street Northwest and saw you from afar crossing. You know why you saw me on 7th? Wait, either you saw me by Howard because I went to Sankofa to go do my notes for my live, by the way, or you saw me going to the Apple Store because I need to get this piece for the new MacBook, which I didn't even get to use tonight. So yeah, that was me you saw. I was probably walking mad fast too, right? What up, James? Let's see. Somebody said, damn, when I was working for Apple, Mojave was literally the worst to remote work in. Mojave was taking me through it, but it was at that time, it was the only operating system that was compatible with the version of Pro Tools that I had. And that was the other thing. And then Final Cut Pro, which is what I edit the videos in when I do like the pre-made videos. You know, with Final Cut Pro, after you make your video, you have to send it to a compressor. The problem is the compressor kept upgrading, and the version of the compressor that I had couldn't update anymore. So I was stuck in an old version of the compressor. And so when I would send something to the compressor, sometimes it wouldn't compress, or it would just crash. And so I'd have to keep sending it to the compressor like 1,000,000 times and start the MacBook over. And here was my trick. I'd be in Final Cut Pro. I'd be done with my project. I go file, send to compressor. It opens in the compressor. You set up the settings, you know, blah, 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 release it here, title this. And then before I hit start batch, then I'd close out the Final Cut Pro, then hit the start batch. The computer would freeze, and then I'd give it a few minutes. And then I knew that if the compression did not start after 8 minutes, it was not going to start. So then I have to just start it all over again, restart the MacBook, right? Because sometimes when you restart it, then it might work. And then if you were successful, say I was doing like 2 videos in the same day, which I haven't done it forever, it might compress one, but it ain't compressing the other. You got to go through that process all over again. This is a journey, right? I'm gonna hold on to this. All right. Insert that we don't have the capacity. Seriously. Yeah, this MacBook, God bless. It's okay. Darling Nikki saying it's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. Amen. 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 Going Up Yonder, that's a good one. Like, I ain't gonna lie, like that really to me is like the ultimate funeral song. I don't want to talk about funerals right now because I don't even want to go in that direction and start thinking about folks. But yeah, that to me is the ultimate one. Let's see. Is that the one with the CD slot? Yeah, look. They don't even make these no more. Look at that CD slot. Look at that. Boom. I was still putting discs up in here, right? It still has the traditional like internet. Look, half of these don't exist. I'm so pissed because this one right here is the only reason why this hooks to your Thunderbolt, which hooks to my Pro Tools and my interface. And so the only reason we're even on this new one today is because they don't have the cord yet. I have to order it. So I was like, dang, so whatever. This here holds for like the those little cards for your cameras. If you got like a digital camera, like I got a Nikon D5100 and a few other ones. The SD card goes there. You know, the regular USB ports. That's the internet port. Half of these ain't even on the side of this new thing. Apple be getting on my nerves, always changing their software. They get on my nerves so much. So yeah, all right. Any other funeral songs? So we've done never would have made it. Okay, we never would have made it. We went up the yonder, and we said it was so hard to say goodbye. This is a long service too, because this funeral, this is like the Aretha Franklin service. Remember, Aretha's funeral was like 6 days long. And they just kept singing. Folks was falling asleep in the back. So yeah, we got to make sure that the MacBook gets its just due. Also, who's doing the eulogy? Somebody got to do the eulogy for it. All right. Somebody said write it or donate it as a tax write-off. Yo, the way I just extended my taxes, I was like, let me just push it off. Because when they was telling me what I owed, I was like, let me just extend. Something ain't right. Something ain't right. Let me extend. I said, there's no way I spent all that money on that movie and I still owe. Nope. Let's see. Piscean Beauty said Sankofa. Yeah, I love me some Sankofa. When I want to be fake healthy, I go over there and get a smoothie, and I always get the Catherine Collins sandwich, which is like this salmon wrap thing. All right, we're gonna wind down soon. Somebody said back light went out. Take Me to the King. I like Take Me to the King, but I only really just like the end of the song. And it take like 5 minutes to get to that part, but I still like the song. Somebody said, nope, keep it as a dinosaur. I've kept all my laptops. I still have 3 other ones that weren't MacBooks. One was like an HP, one was a Dell. I still have my laptop from college. I keep them all because some of them things got files and stuff still in them that I feel like I just want it just to be safe. Even though I have everything backed up, I'm like, just in case. Right? Brandon said my song was better. What was your Say Hello to Heaven, Temple of the Dog? You know what I was always thinking? This is random because I'm not trying to kick the bucket anytime soon. I always said when I have my funeral, I don't even want a eulogy. I want a comedian to do mine. Like my funeral better be funny is I don't know what. Yeah. And yeah, I want the music to be cranking. Like, but we're not gonna talk about that. I'm gonna be here for a while. So yeah. But yeah, so amen to the MacBook. Okay, so like we said, that's pretty much it. Like I said, folks in New York, I'm out there on the 2nd at the what's the name of that spot again? I want to make sure I say it wrong. I'll post a flyer tomorrow on the community tab as well. Oh yeah, Jim's Bar and Lounge. I want to say that's somewhere in Brooklyn. So that's May 2nd. It's not a concert. It's not a solely me event. I'm on a ticket with a bunch of other folks, but while I'm there, you can definitely chop it up, hang out. We have, I think, 2 more cities, and then I'll figure out what I'm doing for DC. And I want to actually do a few different kind of events. So this more is kind of like club setting, lounge setting. So if you're not a club person, don't worry about it. We got some other stuff at some point. The director I work with for the short film gave me a really, really awesome idea for a meet and greet that's a bit more formal, but it would also tackle a few other things. So I think that's the approach we're going to do for DC. And maybe if that one is very successful, we'll also do it in one other place. But that'll be much later. I'm still a little booked. We're still working on the documentary for something totally unrelated. And so I've been traveling a little bit. That's also what we're doing as well. Like while these cities where I'm specifically doing them in cities where we're filming. So it's kind of like I can do 2 things at once. Because then we can do LA soon again. My plate's full. y'all, I'm trying to do a better job of balancing out my life so I can live a little bit. But, you know, as opportunities come, you take them. So I'm not complaining. And yeah. All right. Anything else before I wind down? Oh, Maya and Mia got our eulogy here. We are gathered here today to honor equipment that was more than a piece of hardware crafted I cannot do this. By Chinese hands. It was a tree maker, fertilizer of seed, conductor of electricity and creativity. A real one. Amen. Yes, it was a real one. Y'all are silly. Yes, RIP 2012 laptop. Y'all know I still got my iPod, right? My iPod from 2008 that I still be using. Dang, I can't even plug that in this thing. I don't even think. Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do about my iPod. I mean, I stream in the car, but I still got my iPod because it's music in there that you can't get nowhere else that's not on the streaming site. So I don't know what we're gonna do with that. Dang. Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I need to go to bed, y'all. Dang. Regina said it still. Yeah, it still works. It was like the only reason I'm not using it now is because I got a new car, right? You know, because all my stuff was just getting old. The old car was making too many expensive sounds, and so I was like, all right, it's time for a new car. And it was good timing because Orange Man and them tariffs and all that crap, I bought just in time before everything jumped back up. Now I'm pissed that I got a car note because my car was paid off. It was living good, right? But I'm not complaining. I really like the new car. It rides very nicely. I've already done 2 road trips. All right. Yeah, so that's it. Anyway, thank y'all for riding with me. I apologize that the first version of this live gave us a hard time. We had to start over. And King's Court said, Calvin, we said. All right. Yeah, so hopefully we won't have any more problems now that we have a faster device. We should be good. And yeah, somebody, like I said, asked me to bring back the R&B is Dead series. We'll see. I really like doing the music talks because I can be a bit more in depth, but they do take a long time. I currently do not have any additional deep dives planned, but when I do have one, I won't announce it. That way it'll just come and y'all won't be waiting for months at a time asking when is it coming. It'll just show up. But yeah, thanks for those who enjoyed the New Jack Swing one. It was kind of funny because some folks got mad at the beginning because they either turned it off too early and assumed that, you know, we start off with the story of how K-pop is influenced by New Jack Swing, but some people were confused with where I was going and thought I was trying to give credit to South Korea for New Jack Swing. I'm like, see, y'all don't even have the attention span to watch a video because I cleared it up in the first 3 minutes. You mean to tell me 2 minutes you couldn't get through? All right, attention span is just too short. Anyway, all right, guys, I'm out. Have a good night. Stay safe, stay sane, mind your business so that you can age well and protect your peace. Anyway, folks, see you next time.